is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question. This is called gravity. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. This is called gravity.
Neil, I gotta say, you're totally blowing my mind right now.
That's what I do. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch.
What is up, everybody? John the Morgile here, coming to you live from Honea Pass, South Carolina. Today is December the 14th, 2024, and it is Saturday. So Shabbat Shalom to you all. Happy Saturday, and Merry Christmas coming up. Looks like we just lost Brad as we were popping into the stream, so I think he might be having some internet connectivity issues. So he'll probably be popping back in here in uno momento. But before we get started, I would just like to welcome y'all here to my stream today. This stream, as all my streams, are brought to you by Flat Earth Farms in NorCal. Dank So Fire. You'll realize the Earth is flat. Buy some for your Globetard friends at select distribution centers in California. Also, this stream is brought to you by Riverside FM, which is the platform that I'm using to present this stream to you. And so if you are thinking about doing streams of your own or any kind of recording AV stuff, there's an affiliate link in the description box below for Riverside FM, which I definitely love the product. I'm not exactly thrilled with their billing department as of right this moment, but we won't get into all that right now. They definitely are lacking in the support end, though, let's just say that. But you know, many new companies are like that sometimes, I guess. Anyways, looks like Brad is having some issues with the camera and mic. Brad, what you need to do, my man, is just exit the stream, like close out your browser, and then re-enter the stream, and you should be good to go. If you can hear me, I'll send you a text as well. Well, actually, so yeah. Sorry. Yeah, there we go. He must have heard me, so he just did just that. Okay, so what we're going to do today is talk about the USS Liberty, okay? And for those of you who are not familiar with the story behind the USS Liberty, welcome to the club. So what I'm going to do once Brad pops back in is I'm going to just read through a couple of articles giving a bit of backstory into the USS Liberty as well as the 6-Day War, which is pertinent to this event, which is clearly and obviously one of those false flag events, right? Now, we're all very much familiar with the Gulf of Tonkin incident, right? Which that one is basically what got us, you know, the United States into the police conflict or whatever it was, the war in Vietnam, you know, so that was like the Gulf of Tonkin incident. But so this is the USS Liberty, which was accidentally attacked by the IDF, the Israeli defense fuckers or whatever, I don't know. Anyway, Brad, we got you back, man. Can you hear me okay? And are you loud and clear?
Yeah, I'm here. It looks okay. So if like I said, it just started raining on me. So if that prevents the website, you know, the thing, then I'll just pop out.
No worries, man. Everything looks okay, and it's not a big deal. But when I eventually do roll the video, like I said, I'm not going to be able to navigate away from that screen. So if you do pop out while I'm reviewing the video or responding to the video, then I may not see you trying to get back in if you do try to get back in. So just so you know, but as long as I'm in
I understand.
Here, okay, cool. So what I'm going to, and just introduce yourself, Brad, and say hey to the chat if you don't mind.
Okay. Hey, my name's Brad. I've been following John now for several years and like all the same subjects and whatnot. So I'm just jumping in to see what it's all about.
Bet that up, homie. Okay, so the first article I'm going to just get into is going to be from Britannica.com. Okay, and this has to do with the Six-Day War. This is a quote from this article. Six-Day War was a brief war that took place between, and Brad, can you mute yourself, my man?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, appreciate it. Okay, so the Six-Day War, brief war that took place between June 5th and 10th of 1967, and this was the third of the Arab-Israeli wars. Israel's decisive victory included the capture of the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, the Old City of Jerusalem, and Golan Heights. The status of these territories subsequently became a major point of contention in the Arab-Israeli conflict. Some background and escalation. Prior to the start of the Six-Day War, attacks conducted against Israel by fledgling Palestinian so-called guerrilla groups based in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan had increased. These attacks had increased, leading to very costly Israeli reprisals. In November 1966, an Israeli strike on the village of Al-Samu in the Jordanian West Bank left 18 dead and 54 wounded. And during an air battle with Syria in April of 1967, the Israeli Air Force shot down 6 Syrian MiG fighter jets. In addition, Soviet intelligence reports in May indicated that Israel was planning a campaign against Syria, and although inaccurate, the information further heightened tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors. Egyptian President then Gamal Abdel Nasser had previously come under sharp criticism for his failure to aid Syria and Jordan against Israel. He had also been accused of hiding behind the United Nations Emergency Force, or UNEF, stationed at Egypt's border with Israel in the Sinai. Now, however, he moved to unambiguously demonstrate support for Syria. On May 14, 1967, Nasser mobilized Egyptian forces in the Sinai. On May 18th, he formally requested the removal of the UNEF station there. And on May 22nd, he closed the Gulf of Aqaba to Israeli shipping, thus instituting an effective blockade of the port city of Eilat in southern Israel. On May 30th, King Hussein of Jordan arrived in Cairo to sign a mutual defense pact with Egypt, placing Jordanian forces under Egyptian command effectively. Shortly thereafter, Iraq too joined this alliance. Main events of the war. So in response to the apparent mobilization of its Arab neighbors, early on the morning of June 5th, Israel staged a sudden preemptive air assault that destroyed more than 90% of Egypt's air force on the tarmac. A similar air assault incapacitated the Syrian Air Force. Without cover from the air, the Egyptian army was left vulnerable to this attack. Within 3 days, the Israelis had achieved an overwhelming victory on the ground, capturing the Gaza Strip and all of the Sinai Peninsula up to the east bank of the Suez Canal. An eastern front was also opened on June 5th when Jordanian forces began shelling West Jerusalem, disregarding Israel's warning to King Hussein to keep Jordan the hell out of the fight, only to face a crushing Israel counterattack. To keep Jordan out of the fight, only to face a crushing Israeli counterattack. On June 7th of that same year, Israeli forces drove Jordanian forces out of East Jerusalem. And we're talking about like the late 1960s here, if you just joined in. On June 7th, Israeli forces drove Jordanian air forces out of East Jerusalem and most of the West Bank. Photos and films of Israeli troops taking control of the old city of Jerusalem have proved to be some of the war's most iconic images. Now, the Six-Day War in the Golan Heights specifically involved Israeli tanks advancing on the Golan Heights during the Six-Day War between Arab and Israeli forces. And again, this would have been June 10th, 1967. The UN Security Council called for a ceasefire on June 7th, which was immediately accepted by Israel and Jordan. I wonder how long that one lasted. Egypt accepted the following day. Syria held out, however, and continued to shell villages in northern Israel, according to this article in Britannica. On June 9th, Israel launched an assault on the fortified Golden Heights, capturing it from Syrian forces after a day of heavy fighting. Syria accepted the ceasefire finally on June the 10th. Okay, so the aftermath and the legacy, we don't need to read all that. So this is the sort of political climate that we're dealing with when we get into this interview with the gentleman that Ms. Candace Owens is going to be interviewing for the main sort of event of this stream. So a little background there, and that article, actually, this is the last paragraph of the article, so I might as well finish it. There's 2 paragraphs. So the aftermath and the legacy, the Arab countries' losses in the conflict were disastrous. Egypt's casualties numbered more than 11,000, with 6,000 for Jordan and 1,000 for Syria, compared with only 700 casualties for Israel. Excuse me. The Arab armies also suffered crippling losses of weaponry and equipment. The lopsidedness of this defeat demoralized both the Arab public and the political elite. Nasser announced his resignation on June 9th, but quickly yielded to mass demonstrations calling for him to remain in office. That's kind of odd for a politician, isn't it? They must really love the guy. So in Israel, which had proved beyond question that it was the region's preeminent military power, there was euphoria at the victory, right? This 6-day war also marked the start of a new phase in the conflict between Israel and the Palestinian people, since the conflict created hundreds of thousands of refugees practically overnight and brought more than 1 million Palestinians in the occupied territories effectively under Israeli rule. Months after the war, in November, the United Nations passed UN Resolution 242, which called for Israel's withdrawal from the territories which it had captured in the war in exchange for lasting peace. That resolution became the basis for diplomatic efforts between Israel and its neighbors, including the Camp David Accords with Egypt and the push for a 2-state solution with the Palestinians. Okay, so there's that. There's a sort of overview of the geopolitical climate as it was going on in the Middle East. So basically, Israel really needed a big, strong ally to back them. And, you know, the thing about America is the American people won't just go and embroil themselves or entangle themselves in foreign conflicts for no reason. And so what we see time and time again is that maybe not the United States government, but certain elements like rogue or fanatical elements within the U.S. military, which are synonymous or at least in bed with the military industrial complex, these people will sort of invent or manufacture reasons for the American people to jump on the bandwagon of war, right? And so just keep that in the back of your head that, you know, Israel may have proved itself the dominant superpower in that region after the 6-day war. But, you know, I just wonder if they had any help, you know, or I wonder if they just did that all on their lonesome. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with them. It's really hard to keep track of it. I don't know. It seems like they run our government is what it feels like. I don't know how true that is, but it's like they're the 51st state of America and we just do whatever they say.
Right. Yeah, it does seem that way sometimes. And, you know, I'm sitting here, this is just sort of a personal anecdote, so it doesn't really prove anything, but I'm sitting here months after being creamed by that Hurricane Helene here in South Carolina. And it's been months and I'm still waiting on FEMA money, right, for disaster relief. But then, you've got just dozens and dozens of billions going over to Ukraine, and then also the 51st state of Israel. But there's not enough money for American citizens after natural disasters. And by the way, we do pay into those coffers, for every dollar that we earn and every dollar that we spend. It's all taxed, right? And so to me, it is a travesty that the American citizens are sort of secondary to just dumping billions of dollars over to help Israel fight wars. I mean, we're still doing that to this very day. And we're going to get into one of the big reasons why America potentially got embroiled in this conflict, the 6-Day War, which I've never really heard anything about. So I've got one. Anything you want to add before I get into the second article, Brad?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the other article, and the links for these are down in the description as well, but this is a Digital Commons from liberty.edu. Okay, so this is like Liberty University. And Brad, if you don't mind muting up, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you. God bless you. Scholar and a gent. Okay, so this is introduction. To many, June 8th, 1967 is just another tragic accident in the history of the United States Navy. However, this incident on the fateful day of June was not an aircraft accident or a training exercise failure. No, rather, it was a controversial attack committed by the State of Israel, an allied nation to the United States, which resulted in the death of 34 American service members and the wounding of 171 others. Hold on, I gotta smack the black off of little Lily. Hold on. Stop, Lily. Good girl, you got it. Sit. Good girl. You got it, mammy. Sit. Sit, Boogaloo. Good girl. You better sit, mammy. Good girl. All right, sorry, y'all. Okay, so little Boogaloo. Additionally, this attack was not just a stray missile or a lone boat attack. Instead, this was an attack that lasted for over 2 hours by both air and sea forces of the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF. Nearly 60 years later, this incident still very much relevant in the American-Israeli geopolitical conversation, and yet is largely forgotten or ignored by the American public. In the 1960s, the 1960s were a tumultuous time for the American military, which was in the midst of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. In addition, the American military began deploying troops to Vietnam in 1965. And in June of 1967, the 6-Day War began between Israel and Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. This conflict began with Israel launching preemptive strikes initially against Egypt, but also expanding to Syria and Jordan due to their attempts to stop Israeli ships conducting trade through the Straits of Tiran. This war became a cause of concern for the American government, as they feared it could potentially escalate into a larger conflict with the Soviet Union. It's almost like they don't fear that. It's almost like they ever long for that, or at least they want to paint the picture in the public eye that they ever long for that. Because you see, there's a lot of money to be made in trading stocks of the military industrial complex companies, right? And there's sort of like a revolving door between these corporations and these conglomerates of defense companies and the government, right? Big surprise there, right? That wouldn't be a conflict of interest, though, not even in the slightest. Of course not. Pop Brad back in there. Okay, so with the USSR, so Brad, if you can hear me, man, you're gonna have to close out your browser, refresh, rejoin. Okay, with the USSR, I gotta, shit. Okay. With the USSR supporting the Arab nations in the Middle East and the US backing Israel, officials on both sides were aware that the conflict in the region could quickly expand into like Third World War, right? And, you know, by the way, I had mentioned that, you know, even just the public perception that we're on the brink of nuclear war is really good for business for these psychopaths, right? And I guess even for these psychopaths, like they probably just really want to make the money off of it, right? They probably don't really actually want thermonuclear war, as if that's even a thing, right? But most people think that it is, right? Even these psychopathic, you know, arms dealers, basically, I don't think that they really want war. They just want the public perception that we could potentially be in a war at any time. Lilliford, stop it! Oh my God, hold on, y'all. Come here. And Brad, if you can hear me, you're gonna have to close out your browser and rejoin again, because for some reason you're just gonna refresh your system or whatever. It's telling me you have an error on my end. So just close out your browser and rejoin if you can hear me. Hey baby, can you please stop what you're doing? Can you please stop what you're doing? Boogaloo Scrimp, everybody. She was the one on the cutting decks behind me, scratching cardboard boxes. Okay. So they realized that this conflict in the region could quickly expand into a Third World War. Aware of the rising tensions in the area and the potential for expansion of this conflict, the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff ordered that the USS Liberty, a technical research ship, here we go. You back on, man? All right. We good? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here for now.
Oh, I guess I better put the headphones
Yeah,
on.
that's all good.
Okay, cool. All right, so the Joint Chiefs of Staff ordered that the USS Liberty, a technical research ship, be moved from its normal operational area of Western Africa to the coast of Egypt and Israel. In addition, there was a large Soviet presence in the Mediterranean. Sorry, I'm getting all these notifications for some reason. Okay, presence in the Mediterranean with many of their vessels supporting the Egyptians. So that was the Soviets supporting the Egyptians. Thus, the Liberty was ordered to deploy on May 23rd, 1967, and was Peyton E. Smith assault on the USS Liberty, deliberate action or tragic accident. That's just weird the way that was worded. Sorry if that didn't come out right. It didn't sound right to me either. There's just a bunch of weird quotes here. I had to copy and paste this from an online article because for whatever reason, that online article just had so many ads. It was bogging my computer down horribly. So I just captured the text and copied and pasted it. But now it's just a bunch of gobbledygook here. So the Liberty picked up linguists trained in Arabic and in Russian on the way. While en route to its destination, the Israeli military forces attacked Egyptian military targets, and the Six-Day War was declared on June 5th, 1967. Now, the USS Liberty was commissioned in 1945 and later converted into a technical research ship in 1964. The ship was crewed by two different crews. The regular crew of the Liberty and crew members from the Naval Security Group, which numbered 294 men altogether. The Naval Security Group association with the U.S. Navy and the NSA was responsible for counterintelligence, communications intelligence, and electronic intelligence. The two crews were berthed separately on the ship, and certain areas on the ship were off limits to the regular crew. The Liberty was equipped with only 4 Browning 50 caliber machine guns, as its primary purpose was just to gather intelligence rather than engage in combat. Understanding their defensive limitations and being made aware of the outbreak of the Six-Day War, Liberty ship captain Commander William McGonigal requested a destroyer escort from his 6th Fleet commander, William Martin. Now, Admiral Martin responded to McGonigal, stating that the Liberty is, quote, a clearly marked United States ship in international waters and not a reasonable subject for attack by any nation. On the morning of June 8th, the Liberty reached its position 13 miles off the shore of the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. During this morning, multiple Israeli reconnaissance planes flew over the Liberty. The first of these flyovers occurred at approximately 6 a.m. when an Israeli naval pilot relayed to the Israeli Naval Command that he believed he spotted a, quote, U.S. Navy cargo-type ship with a GRT-5 designation. Now, Israeli Naval Command would later confirm that this ship was indeed an American ship, and they would conduct 7 more flyovers before the attack at approximately 1400 hours. Now, crew members of the Liberty reported these, and a bunch of gobbledygook, these overflights, and mentioned that some were low and slow. One crew member would also state, quote, I recall seeing the Star of David on the side and was relieved that it was our friends, the Israelis. We even saw the pilot's face and waved to the guy. He said, I don't recall that he waved back. After these multiple reconnaissance overflights, end quote there. Now, after these multiple reconnaissance overflights, the Israeli Naval Command marked this ship as neutral on their control board. However, at 1100, what? Oh my God! What do you want, man? What? Come on, you went down. Get down, Bubba's. All right, good girl. Get in your fluff bed. Get in your fluff bed. Do you want in there with your mama? I think she wants in there with her mama, y'all. She's probably just going to keep that. If she starts again, I'm going to carry her near the room. Okay. So he said he don't recall if the guy waved back. Now, after these multiple reconnaissance overflights, the Israeli Naval Command marked this ship as neutral on their control board, right? So, however, at 1100, the Israeli Command Center staff removed this neutral identification, as this was a common procedure for a staff change. At approximately 11:30, a large explosion occurred on the coast near where the Liberty was positioned. While in reality, this explosion was caused by an ammunition dump igniting, the Israelis believed that this shelling came from an Egyptian vessel. Fearing Egyptian naval superiority, the chief of staff of the IDF, General Yitzhak Rabin, deployed 3 torpedo boats and fighter jets to find this vessel, which they believed was responsible for shelling the beaches. I mean, this all sounds like absolute nonsense to me. I mean, there are ways to tell whether something's artillery or just an internal explosion that was probably, ignited on purpose by something like along the lines of an arson, right? Purposefully for this narrative that they were trying to spin, right? Anyway, that's just my personal opinion, but according to Israeli reports, Israeli forces were unaware of the Liberty's presence in the area because of that staff change at the naval headquarters. So they did shift change, and now all of a sudden they no longer remember that this is a friendly vessel that they've been waving at.
It's just a coincidence, though.
Yeah, just a coincidence. Rabin thus ordered the Israeli Navy that, quote, all unidentified vessels sailing at over 20 knots, a speed attainable by only gunboats, would be sunk. Thus, 3 Israeli torpedo boats were sent out and reported to General Rabin that they had found this unidentified ship traveling toward Egypt at a speed of 30 knots. The torpedo boats also reported that they could not reach the vessel due to its speed and requested air assistance. This calculation of speed would become a major area of discussion following the attack, as it was severely miscalculated. In addition, the Israeli explanation of how the attack was instigated does not make any sense, as Israeli reports and sources claim the torpedo boats spotted the ship at 13:41 hours, so like 1:45 in the afternoon, but they did not arrive at the Liberty until 2:30 in the afternoon, so like an hour later, thus making their radar detection of the Liberty impossible. Furthermore, both during Israeli reconnaissance flights and directly leading up to the attack, Liberty was traveling at a speed of 5 to 8 knots up and down the coast of Egypt, nearly half of its maximum speed of 18 knots. So they said it went, 30 something knots, but this damn ship can only do 18 max, and it wasn't even doing half of that, right? So thus, not only was the Liberty traveling nowhere near 30 knots, but it would also be impossible for the Liberty to be detected by the Israeli torpedo boats that were not anywhere near it before and during the initial stages of the attack. So they're lying about it too, right? Moreover, on the morning of June 8th, again, this is 1967, 8 earlier Israeli reconnaissance flights identified the Liberty as an American ship. 8 flights, 8 reconnaissance flights, separate flights. At approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the Mirage-class Israeli fighter jets attacked the Liberty, rockets and machine gun fire. Immediately after their first strafe, they would severely damage the Liberty's only form of defense, those 450 cal Browning machine guns positioned on the main deck. They would also target the bridge and communications antenna, aiming to kill the ship's officers and disable the Liberty's ability to call for help. These Israeli fighters created over 800 holes in the Liberty's hull over 3 strafing runs. 4 soldiers were killed and dozens injured, including the Liberty's skipper, Commander McGonigal, whose legs were severely injured. Although injured, McGonigal attempted to send a radio message to the 6th Fleet for help. A message would eventually be sent to the 6th Fleet, and RADM Lawrence Guys ordered an American aircraft to be launched from the USS America. Now, American fighter jets were armed with nuclear ordnances, allegedly, but minutes after they took off, they were recalled under orders from President Lyndon Johnson and Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. So 2 separate high-up stand-down orders to these guys that were going to help. Now, there are conflicting accounts regarding these nuclear-equipped planes. Historian Michael Owen, many of the survivors of the Liberty, and multiple government officials claim that the F-4s aboard USS America, were equipped with nuclear ordnances and were recalled by McNamara and President Johnson. Again, I'm quoting this article here. Now, however, historian A.J. Crystal claims these planes were not armed with nuclear weapons and doubts these assertions that F-4s were equipped with nuclear ordnances. This is among the numerous instances of debate between scholars and witnesses to the attack. Okay, so that pretty much, that does it for this article. So now we sort of have a better understanding of what was going on internally with, the IDF. So what do you think about all this?
Help me understand. That's pretty crazy. Hey, help me understand something right quick. When was this happening on the attack on Liberty versus the 6-Day War? Was it prior to?
So it's right at the same time. We're talking about the beginning of June 1967.
Okay. So it's right around the same time.
So from what I gather, so the guy that we're fixing to watch the interview, he has a lot of great insight. I've seen the first like 10 minutes of this. It's very interesting. But from what I gather, so the servicemen that were on the crew of the ship, they were told that they were just mapping the seafloor. There was just a scientific expedition team. Now, there was also a separate crew of like CIA spooks on the same ship. And these people were segregated. They were isolated from one another, not supposed to communicate with one another. But they lied to the servicemen about why they were there, going up and down the west coast of Africa. And so what apparently happened was the IDF wanted to use this attack on the USS Liberty, blame it on the Arabs, so that the United States would go into war in the Middle East back in the 1960s. While we were still in Vietnam, okay, embroiled in that bloody mess. Absolute madness.
Yeah, nothing they do surprises me anymore. It's literally shocking. I'm so disgusted by everything that comes out of that country. At least as far as politically these days, anyway. But yeah, even our own president said, "I don't care about a couple dead soldiers. We can't embarrass our friends Israel." And call back the air defense. That's absolutely insane. They said that it had a 40-foot by 40-foot hole in the side of that ship. That's double the size of a 2-car garage size hole in the side of this ship. They did everything they could to put that thing down.
Now, when we see things happen like the big attack on the towers back in 2001, y'all know the one that I'm talking about. You know, for years, you would be considered as a nut job, a conspiracy theorist, if you stated that, you know, the official narrative doesn't make sense and it definitely seems like this is a false flag. You were called crazy, nut job. But see, the thing is, though, these sort of false flag manipulations of the American public is the norm, right? That's not the exception to the rule. They do this as a rule. That's how they operate. It's almost like it's the only trick in their playbook. It's the whole problem, reaction, solution thing, the Hegelian dialectic, right?
Well, it works well, so I guess why not?
Yeah, it does work well until your victims are wise to it. Then it just the shit doesn't cut it anymore. But so let's get into this interview with Candace Owens. And I'll be reacting to this with you guys as we go. Now, because the file was so large, I couldn't upload it into my system here. So I've got to play it from like a regular player window. So it's not ideal. And I'm going to sort of rely on Brad to keep an eye on the chat. Just make sure y'all are happy, can hear me and everything. So let me get into this. And if I hadn't said it already, thank you guys so much for joining the stream today, and let's get into the meat of this thing, shall we?
All right, you guys, I'll get right into this. A couple of weeks ago, I received a letter that changed my life, certainly changed the course of my life in politics. And I'm going to read you that letter now and let you know that the author of it is sitting across from me. It reads, "My name is Philip Turney. I am 77 years old today. On June 8th, 1967, I was just 20 years old when the gallant crew of the USS Liberty was savagely attacked. Our American flag was proudly flying on our ship in the Mediterranean Sea that day. The designation AGTR-5 was clearly painted on the bow, port, and starboard sides. USS Liberty was written in English on her stern. When we arrived on June 7th, we were overflown by Israeli reconnaissance aircraft, and the same activity was repeated on the morning of June 8th. We were positively identified as American and friendly by the IDF. We had requested a destroyer escort long before we entered the Mediterranean, but we were denied twice. Our captain assured us that we were clearly marked as American and we therefore had nothing to fear. We were alone, 12.5 miles off the coast of the Sinai Peninsula, always in international waters. The Israeli reconnaissance aircraft were clearly marked with the Star of David. We therefore felt secure seeing a flying boxcar and other smaller recon propeller aircraft taking good care of us. The attack began at 2 o'clock on a beautiful, bright, sunny day by French-made Mirage and Mistral jets painted black with no markings. We had no clue who was attacking us, but assumed it was an Arab state. During the first pass-by, the jets took out all but one of our transmitting antennas, as well as every watertight door above the waterline. The air attack lasted about 25 minutes, killing and maiming our firefighters and any sailor who moved. Our radio man took one antenna offline, so it wasn't transmitting and wasn't hit. He ran a long wire to it, and the SOS went out to the 6th Fleet. It was even picked up as far away as Vietnam. Rockstar, under attack by an unknown jet aircraft. Help us, help us. Captain Tully, skipper of the USS Saratoga, sent jets to come to our aid. Before the jets hit the horizon, they were recalled by Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. Captain Engen of the USS America and Tully relaunched more aircraft to aid us. They were also recalled, this time by Lyndon Baines Johnson himself. He said, quote, "I don't care about a few dead sailors. I will not embarrass my ally, Israel. Return to base immediately," end quote.
Ooh.
How did he know who was attacking us if we did not?
Right.
We were set up by our own government to let a foreign government have their way with us. The IDF even dropped napalm on the bridge of our ship.
Ooh.
How low they would go, we would soon find out. 3 motor torpedo boats headed our way, and 1 torpedo hit our starboard side. We saw the Star of David on the boats. They were there to sink us. The attack continued for another hour and a half. Attacking jet aircraft destroyed all but 3 of our life rafts, which we had put overboard. We were going to place our most seriously wounded in them so that they would have a chance at life, but the IDF would have none of that. They shot 2 of them out of the water and took 1 aboard their boats as a trophy of the kill. They continued.
I'm pretty sure that is against certain international war, like rules of engagement or whatever, right? I mean, all of this is against internationally agreed rules of engagement, but to attack the lifeboats trying to rescue the wounded, that's pretty bad.
Shooting and killing my mates. They left and we thought that it was over, but it wasn't. IDF helicopters were sent with troops armed and ready to board our ship and finish us off. Then they just left. I guess the gig was up when the mighty IDF could not sink our defenseless ship. When it was all done, there were over 821 rocket and cannon holes and over 5,000 armor-piercing bullets riddling the ship. Napalm was burning us up, and a 40 by 40 foot torpedo hole was in her side, causing the ship to list badly to our starboard side. We then waited 17 hours for help. I guess they hoped that we would sink that night. Help was only 40 minutes away from us, but they left us out alone to die. When the USS America and the USS Davis arrived to help us, they took our wounded to care for them. Their wounds were so horrific, words cannot explain. Admiral Kidd boarded our ship a few days later, and the cover-up immediately began. We were ordered to never speak of the attack to anyone, not even with one another. Penalties would be fines, imprisonment, or worse, and we all knew that worse meant death. We have been treated like garbage for the last 57 years. Congress has been bought and paid for, with the exception over the years of a few brave lawmakers. Their names are Representatives Pete McCloskey, Paul Findley, and Jim Traficant. As the courageous Rep. Thomas Massey has noted, all Republican members of Congress except for him have APAC handlers. We can assume this is also true of nearly all Democrats. We are the most decorated ship in naval history for a single engagement. I believe God saved us that day to allow us to communicate the truth of this attack to leaders like you. We give all power to Jesus Christ. We are just his servants that horrible day and now. The USS Liberty survivors are the biggest whistleblowers this country has ever seen. We have been smeared as anti-Semitic, Jew haters, and Nazis. Our only sin is that we survived. We didn't kill anyone. Israel did all the murdering that day, and the US government did all the covering up. I'm asking you to help us save America by telling others the facts about the slaughter of my mates. We are begging you to support us. Respectfully, Phil Turney, the president of the USS Liberty Veterans Association.
So, quite an intro, quite a letter that dude wrote, and she's getting ready to interview the guy that wrote that letter. I guess he's 77 years old now, and he's trying to shout this from the rooftops. I think it's interesting, at least for me personally, that Candace Owens is the one that happened to get this particular interview. I should preface this by saying that I love Candace Owens. I love her work. I've been following her for a long time. I highly respect her, her opinions and her research. And I see her as one of the good ones, one of the ones that can't be bought and can't be blackmailed or, manipulated. Although I do see one potential vector of blackmail and manipulation for Candace Owens in particular. I'm not going to air that out here because we really still don't know how this whole Antarctica thing is going to unfold. But, the reason I mentioned Candace Owens and Antarctica in the same breath is because when I reacted to the Will Duffy interview last week, Will Duffy mentioned that Candace Owens was going to Antarctica on the final experiment. Now, I've tried to verify this. I do remember Candace mentioning a few things about, flat Earth stuff and not trusting NASA and mentioning Antarctica. So it definitely sounds like Candace. I'm just having trouble verifying that. I can't seem to find any 100% verification that she's actually going. Now, the reason I'm even mentioning this is just to put a marker out there. If Candace Owens comes back from Antarctica and starts shilling for the globe, I know why she's doing it, right? But I'm not going to tell you yet. Let's just see what happens first. Okay. But if you guys have been following my streams for like the last week or so, you'll be able to figure out what I'm saying. Okay. And I don't even know if what I'm saying is 100% true. I've never done that sort of investigation, if you will, on this particular individual. And I really don't want to have to. Like, I think that this person's work speaks for itself, and I highly respect this person. But at the same time, let's just see what happens coming back from Antarctica if she actually went, right? So anyway, thoughts, Brad, before I roll back into the clip there?
Yeah, his story is really amazing. It helps put into perspective what we're dealing with our country. It's, on one hand, you don't want to not be patriotic, but my goodness, it's like the enemy's already taken things over from within because the enemy was standing right next to Israel the day that this happened.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned being patriotic. I've always been considered myself very patriotic. Always had a high degree of respect for the military and even entities like NASA, historically. But, coming into the age of revelation, those sort of ideal like idealized ideas that we have of these entities like the military and NASA begin to corrode a little bit. Because, we do see these sort of injustices. And, the World War II vets and the guys that were, volunteering to go fight overseas were sort of a different breed than we have today. But, I think it's also real important to make a distinction real fast before we get into this. I think there's a distinction to make between the Jewish people and fringe Talmudists, if you will. So people who are ideologically affected by their belief in holy books known as the Talmud, right? And historically, the Talmud was not actually in book format. It was a verbal tradition from rabbi to rabbi to rabbi over the course of generations. But there is some pretty alarming and downright evil stuff that you'll find in the Talmud. And so I think it's important to differentiate, so between the U.S. government and people like Joe Biden and your average American citizen, right? I think that there is also a distinction to be made by people, between people like Bibi Netanyahu and your average Jewish citizen, right? I think that you can't necessarily generalize an entire race of people under one sort of banner, right? And I know it can be sort of.
Well, one of the things that.
this sort of
what they do is they conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Judaism or anti-Semitism, and they're not the same. I don't have anything against Jewish people. It's the Zionist regime that I'm not for.
Yeah, hold on. I gotta go shut my door. Hold on. Please don't open that door again. Okay. Sorry about that. And Brad, I don't know if you changed your mic again, but I think you're a lot lower than you were before. And I can still hear you, but it's a lot lower than it was before. Just heads up. I mean, it should.
So anyway, I was just. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just making the difference. I don't have anything against the Jewish people. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm anti-Zionist.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Agreed. And I know I wasn't saying that. I was just saying I kind of want to make sure that we get that distinction out there because, I mean, I'm not either. My wife's like a third Jewish. She's also Italian and Native American too. So she's not like a Jew, right? But I don't have anything against like Jewish bloodlines. I think that's ridiculous. I think people that like have angst against entire races of people. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying I think that's absurd. But they definitely do use that sort of race card way more than any other race, don't they? When in fact, if you study things like the Talmud and even like the Old Testament, this group of people particularly is one of the most racist group of people that you'll ever encounter, right? So, I mean, pot calling the kettle black, right?
Great honor to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Candace. It's a great honor for me to be here and represent the gallant crew of the USS Liberty that had been treated so badly, as I said in the letter, for 57 years.
So I just want to start just really at the beginning, I guess. When did you sign up to be in the United States military?
I joined the Navy at 17 years old at San Diego, California. That's where I went to boot camp. I did 2 tours of Vietnam before I got aboard the USS Liberty. And I did 3 tours with her, including her last. So that was my naval career. And I got out of the Navy, and then I wasn't working at the time. I thought I'd never go back in because why would I go back into a place where people are going to try to kill me? But I wasn't working, I had a baby. So I went back in and I got aboard the USS Maddox, DD-731, which was in the Tonkin Gulf, which was another false flag.
Wow. So just as a question, I mean, most people just being in the Vietnam War, I mean, that was traumatizing enough, obviously. So you came back and you decided that you were still going to serve the country. When exactly did you find out that you were going to be aboard the USS Liberty?
I found out when I got orders to go to the East Coast from the West Coast. I was on an ammunition ship then, USS Mauna Kea AE-22. I said, well, great, I'm going away to the East Coast, and I always wanted to go there anyway. So I ended up on the Liberty. And when I got aboard the Liberty, they said it was a ship that mapped the bottom of the ocean. And I said, wow, how could that be when all the antennas are going straight up? But I was a dumb kid. I believed
it wasn't that dumb. I mean, he was asking the right question, wasn't he?
Anything they told me until a few months after that. I said, no, this ain't right. We're a spy ship.
Okay, so they initially said to you, they didn't even, you're serving on a ship and they don't even tell you the truth about why you're there. So here you are and they're like, you're just here to map the bottom of the ocean?
Yes, that's what they told me.
Okay.
But there were 2 different crews aboard that ship. There were 200 spies, CIA, NSA spies. And I was in ship's company, engineering. And there were 100 of us and with the other guys, bosun mates, cooks, things like that, to run the ship. Our only job, Candace, was to make sure that the communication technicians got where they had to go so they could do their deal.
Okay. And so when did you notice, or I guess, when did it become apparent to you? How long had you been aboard before you went, I don't really think that we're here to map the bottom of the ocean? Did they tell you, hey, I'm actually in the CIA or I'm in the NSA?
No, they didn't talk to us, and we didn't talk to them. We weren't allowed to.
Okay.
And so it was two different crews. And I we figured it out pretty quick what was going on, but yeah, it was so secret. I mean, everything was secret, very, very secret.
And did you, just wondering how the setup is, are you sharing a room with 4 or 5 people? How does that work on the ship?
Well, I was in a bunk room with about 70 men.
70 men in one room.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was engineering spaces. And up forward was the bosun mates. That's where they had their berthing. The spies were in the back of the ship.
Okay. And so what's a typical day like?
Typical day was get up, take a shower, go to chow, go to work, stand your watches. And when we were out at sea, we'd sunbathe a lot because, we were always off the coast of Africa. And we were doing reconnaissance there, up and down the coast, 4 or 5 miles an hour all the time. And we just go up and down and up and down. We go to ports, different ports, Luanda, Angola, Abidjan, you name it, all the ports on the west coast.
So it's beautiful.
Oh my, was it ever. Great taste, pineapples, everything. It was great. I love those people. They were good to us.
And you're also thinking this is very low risk. You're going, hey, in terms of having an engagement, I'm being sent out here. It's beautiful weather. We're sunbathing. Things are looking up.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was good duty. It was great duty. But on the last cruise, we were headed to Africa again, just like we always did. We stopped in Abidjan, and this was in June. And we got emergency orders to leave. We just gotten there. We got emergency orders to leave, get everybody back aboard ship ASAP. And we took off for points. We had no idea where we were going, but the 6-day war was going on.
Okay.
And we didn't know it.
Oh, you didn't know it was going on?
No, not till a little bit later.
Okay. Okay. So at this point, and just to be clear, how long had you been aboard the USS Liberty?
I did a little over 2.5 years on the Liberty.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah.
You had seasick, not seasick at all then, I guess.
I got seasick every time I went out for about a week, and then it was gone.
Okay.
Isn't that so typical of the military, though? Like they told the crew that they were going off to the coast of Africa to map the bottom of the ocean floor, when in fact it was definitely a spy ship loaded with a bunch of CIA and NSA spooks that was basically earmarked to be intentionally torpedoed. Yeah, that's just, as much respect as I do have for the U.S. military men and women, when it comes to the higher ups, the brass, or like the spiritual wickedness in high places that all of this shit always ends up falling back to, yeah, not so much respect there. I don't know.
So now you get these emergency orders and you have no idea where you're going. Are they giving you any information, or they're just saying it's an emergency, everybody get back in?
Everybody get back in, and we headed to Rota, Spain. We picked up 3 Marines. They were linguists, and a civilian, Alan Blue. He was he was killed, by the way. He was another linguist, but he worked directly for the NSA.
Okay. Okay. So he gets on board. You're in Spain now, and then where do you go?
We had into the Mediterranean, and to go through the Rock of Gibraltar and all that. And all the ships were going this way, going the other way. We were the only one going that way.
You're going the wrong way, bro. Turn around.
Okay. And still nobody's informing you about the 6-day war?
We did find out that we were going into a war zone.
Okay. And what information, if any, did they give you?
None.
None. You're just going into a war zone. Prepare for anything?
No, we were prepared because our captain, Captain McGonigal, we trained all the time for different situations, chemical drills, fire, all kinds of different stuff.
And what's the general mood as you guys are heading towards there, the conversation between you and your shipmates?
apprehension. In fact, we had the Star of David. We knew what was going on then. People had Star of Davids all over the ship, inside the ship, hoping Israel would win because they were our best buddies in the whole wide world. And come to find out they weren't.
And of course, this guy's telling you the truth, right? Obviously, he's not lying about that. But these are the ones that they're labeling as anti-Semites and Jew haters, for the last 50-something years. That's crazy, man. Crazy. But that's the card that they pull, and it works somehow, right?
So now it's June 7th. Is that correct, when you arrive into the Sinai Peninsula?
Right. We got there on the 7th, and the Israelis started overflying us then, taking pictures of us. Same thing happened on the June the 8th. Flying boxcar, which is a 2-engine plane. The doors were open. You could see the cameraman taking pictures of us.
So they're that close. They're that low.
Oh, yeah. You could see the pilots. We would wave at them, they'd wave at us. Very friendly. They would dip their wings like everything's great. And we felt good because our best friends were there. And we had no worries. I mean, none at all, because they were going to protect us. But it ended up they didn't.
So you had described in your letter saying that you had the American flag displayed. Can you describe for me, first and foremost, again, reiterate where it was displayed and also how large the flag was?
Right. It was on the mast, and the flag was brand new. It was a 5x8 flag, very visible. It was 12 knots going over across the deck. You could see the flag. And in fact, the Israelis identified us as American and friendly.
How do you know that?
Well, we know it because of the intercept we picked up, and they admitted it themselves. We were on their war table. They identified us as American. And when they changed the watch, they forgot to tell the other watch commander that we were there. They took us off their war table. So we know.
And, that sounds like just an absolute bonehead excuse to me. And real quick, I'm going to go ahead and check in on you guys in the chat, because for all I know, I'm sitting here talking to myself. So let me just check in with you guys on the chat and make sure that everything looks okay. Oh, we lost you, Brad. There we go. We'll get Brad back in here too while I'm back over here. And Hey, what's up, man? And I'm assuming that that everybody can hear the video that I'm playing. It's not just me talking to a blank video, soundless. Did I lose you again?
I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I was just wanting to know, can everybody hear the video that I'm playing? I should have checked way earlier.
I can't hear it, but
oh well, let me play it. Hold on, I want to pick it back up. So if you can't hear it, stop me.
Well, we no longer existed.
Okay, when you say take you off the war table, I'm not familiar with that lingo.
Okay.
So what does that mean? They took us off the war.
Well, on the war table, they have like different ships or different.
Like literally set up the table
Right.
that shows you.
Right,
Okay.
and what's going on, and they took us off, so we were gone to them.
That's an excuse. I mean, I'm sure they did take them off the war table, but they did not know who they were, which becomes very evident in the way that the ship was attacked. I mean, if they had a 5-foot by 8-foot American flag displayed prominently on the mast, which is at least 14, 15 foot up above the tallest part of the ship, a 5-foot by 8-foot American flag. But the IDF knew how to target all of their machine guns, all of their radars, all of their watertight doors above the waterline. And so they had all that intel on it, but they didn't know it was American. Yeah, this is absolutely a travesty. And the fact that Israel is still considered our staunchest ally in the Middle East is just absurd. It's absurd.
They thought, but they knew exactly what they were doing. Exactly what they were doing. When they overflew us, they took the pictures of all the ship. They knew exactly what to hit and when to hit it. And I might add, I believe, and I think most of my shipmates believe, that this attack was planned a year in advance.
A year in advance?
Yes.
What makes you say that?
Well, there was another spy ship in the area, USS or SS Valdez. It was a civilian manned ship, but it was owned by the Navy. It could have done the same thing that we were doing, but they took them out of the area. Sinking the USS Liberty is a hell of a lot sexier than sinking the Valdez.
Why's that?
Well, it's all American sailors and Marines. They wanted this at the bottom, and so they could blame it on the Arab states and bring us into World War III.
Yep. I mean, that's it right there. Dude just nailed it. They've been trying to get us into this sort of explosive embroiled conflict in the Middle East since the late 1960s. While we were still embroiled in Vietnam, mind you. Right, that went on up until like 1972, I think, right? Maybe I'm wrong. 72, 73, something like that. These people, using the term loosely, are crazy. They are, and I'm not talking about Jewish people. I'm talking about the military industrial complex people. They're crazy. And they are of all walks of life, race, colors, and creeds, right? It's not just one race of people involved in the military industrial complex. And, you know, as I mentioned previously, it really doesn't matter to them whether we are actually on the brink of some, you know, worldwide war, or if there's just this sort of public perception that we are on such a brink. It doesn't make a difference to them really, because their stocks go up, right? Again, I don't think that they necessarily want war, but you know, these sort of Ivy Leaguers, their bloodlines are usually out of the military pool, right? Like the military pool is kind of reserved for people that don't have much else going for them. I mean, it's very rare that you find someone that, you know, joins the military because they are very patriotic and just love military stuff. There are a few like that, for sure. But the majority of people that join the military do so because they get a lot of benefits, the pay is decent, and it's a good way to, you know, pay for college and things like that. There's a lot of perks to joining the U.S. military. But, you know, that's a big difference. There's a big difference between that and people volunteering because they are very patriotic, right? And so with all that being said, yeah, you're not dealing with a bunch of gung-ho soldier types, especially these days. You're dealing with regular people who were lied to be put on this ship in the position that they were in, and then used as basically pawns in the world stage. You know, the military theater, if you will. Absolutely crazy.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. Now, it's the morning of the 8th, and you like you said, on the 7th, they took pictures, they positively identified you, you were able to hear this over the radio. Did they still have at that moment the CIA agents on board?
Yes.
The NSA agents were on board, so you still got the exact same amount of people that are on board here.
Right.
Okay, so we're talking about a pretty big sacrifice they were willing to make.
Right.
Total number of people?
294 souls.
294 souls.
You know, if the Titanic has any lessons to be learned from it, you know, because on the Titanic that was sunk probably deliberately as an insurance scam, sort of besides the point. But, you know, JP Morgan, who comes up in all of these sort of conversations about the hijacking of the American political system, JP Morgan was responsible for putting together the VIP guest list on the Titanic's maiden voyage, right? And so one could argue, and it's almost certain, that like JP Morgan's political you know, opponents, or like people specifically that could have blocked the Federal Reserve Act specifically. Those people died on the Titanic. A lot of them, like, you know, the Guggenheims, I can't think of the damn people's names. I'm drawing a blank, but I know Guggenheim was one of them. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. But the point is, I just wonder if very key people died or were supposed to die on the USS Liberty that day, right? So like the people who knew that this was going to happen ultimately could have put their political enemies on that ship, and they could have put, you know, people that they just didn't really want around because they could have stood in their way of their ambitions. It's just food for thought. And it is probably worth researching, you know, exactly who died on that ship, or maybe like people that were of, you know, certain import that were put on that ship last minute. It might be just an interesting sort of rabbit hole to go down.
I feel like she just summed it all up when she said it was a pretty big sacrifice to make.
Yeah,
that's what the whole operation feels like, was a sacrifice.
That's what it. Yeah, it does. It really does. And you know, the thing is, especially when you're talking about these Talmudists, they love that kind of stuff, man. They live for the, you know, the slaughter of innocents. They think they can somehow collect that, I don't know, power, whatever it is. I don't know.
Take me through what happened
with the devil, you have to sacrifice.
You get up.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, if you're dealing with the devil, you're going to have to make sacrifices to get what you want. That's just how it works.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, specifically, I think this one was more along the lines of, you know, yeah, sure, it probably would have acted as one of those sacrifices, but then also it would have been much easier to get the American people behind a war in the Middle East. Oh, look, the Arab nations attacked one of our sovereign military vessels. They were just mapping the ocean floor. And look, they just turned their damn ship into Swiss cheese, right? They were trying to blame it on the Arabs. Which of course they're still doing that shit.
That's the most disgusting thing ever.
It really is. It really,
they don't ever shut up. And you know, you can't. When I grew up in that, I lived in Saudi Arabia as a boy, and you know, it was always them and us, and we're different, and blah blah blah. And at the end of the day, none of that shit's true. Everybody at the end of the day wants to come home from having a fair day's work and spend some time with their wife and kids and sleep peacefully. And we all want the same thing. They're not different than us. You know, it's ridiculous. All of it is. It's crazy that we ever fell for this shit.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I'll take that a step further as well. You know, as a Christian, I remember being indoctrinated that, you know, the Muslim holy book, the Quran, was some sort of an evil book. But of course, I had never read a word of it. And when I actually took the time to just read it, you know, which I thought, you know, I might earn me a place in hell a little bit in the back of my mind, because you're not supposed to read that book according to the Christians. It's so similar. Like they even have the same archangels, you know, Gabriel, Raphael, you know, the similarities between the Quran and a lot of the Old Testament stuff far outweigh the differences. Like they're cut from the same damn cloth, right? And so I just think it's a huge travesty. Go ahead.
They can say that Allah is a different God all they want. At the end of the day, if he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that's the same as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is in our Old Testament, then we're talking about the same deity. I mean, I don't.
Right.
Well,
and there's that. Yeah, sure. I mean, there is for sure only one creator. And, you know, if you speak a different language, you probably have a different name for him, right? But it's the same God. Absolutely. But you know, the thing that really gripes me is that just how ignorant I was personally, because, you know, I was ready to sign up and go overseas and fight in a war against, you know, Arab people because I was convinced that they did 9/11. You know what I mean? And also because, of course, their religion is evil. Everybody knows that. Of course, I had never read a word of the Quran. And when you do actually take the time to read the Quran, I think a lot of it's really quite beautiful. I mean, you got to take every religious book with a bit of a pinch of salt, I think. But I was very surprised at how much I was moved when I read the Quran. But I also think that it was just like all other religions, manipulated by men who, you know, ruin everything. Basically, you know, greedy men ruin everything, don't they?
Yeah.
We get up with 0600 And like I say, we go to chow and take a shower, go to chow, go to work. We had a damage control drill just before the attack, say about 1 o'clock. And I was in damage control. I was assistant on-scene leader in damage control. And I was in an impregnated suit, which is a suit for washing down the ship of chemicals. And it was very, very hot that day. I mean, 100 degrees on the deck, easy or more. And I thought I was going to pass out. It was so hot. Finally, it was over with. And I went and stowed my gear. Excuse me, the sound-powered phones weren't working on the starboard gun mount.
The sound?
Yeah, they're sound-powered phones, from just like, you could put on headphones, but they were sound-powered. They weren't electrical. And for some reason, it wasn't working. And I went to the IC shop, and I got a friend of mine, David Skolak. He was an IC seaman, and that was his job, take care of the IC system there for sound-powered phones and the IC system, intercoms on the ship. And he came up there, and the gunner's mate was up there also. They were manning the guns. We were in a condition 3, just in case, because we could see the bombs going off and everything on the Sinai. So we thought, that this is really not a good place to be. And just as soon as I left that gun mount, about 30 seconds after I left it, I got back to my workstation, and all hell broke loose. The attack began.
What's the first thing you remember?
First thing I remember was all hands get to your general quarter stations. We're under attack. We're under attack. And I got to my GQ station, which is in the front part of the ship. And those 2 men that I just left there, not a minute it took me to get back up there. They were dead. They're blown to bits. Anything that moved aboard that ship, they were shot at. As in the letter, they took out all of our antennas within 3 seconds. Our 450 caliber machine guns were gone. Every watertight door was hit. And this went on for 25 minutes, dropping napalm on us. 25 minutes of that, you can't imagine. Every second was like an hour. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. And you got people severely blown up, wounded badly. And it continued and continued and continued for 25, 30 minutes. And then there was a lull.
So this was 1967. They're dropping napalm on a vessel at sea. That's pretty bizarre. I mean, I know that napalm was developed, if I'm not mistaken, or it was like pulled out of the arsenal specifically for Vietnam to because they were so dug in, and so like napalm is basically a liquid that they drop out of a like a bomb, and that liquid burns everything. Like it'll even burn underwater, right? Napalm is really nasty stuff. I know that it is illegal to use it now, even in a war. Like it's a war crime to use it, but to use it on a Navy ship, that's pretty crazy. Because again, when it gets into water, it burns hotter. If I'm not mistaken, really nasty stuff to be doing on people that consider you their allies. But these Talmunists, they see anybody that isn't one of them as cattle. Goyim is what they call it, right? So that we're expendable, I guess. And in fact, according to the Talmud, it says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the smarter and better looking a person is that isn't, that is a Goyim, the more deserving they are to die, right? And you can use them, right? This is the Talmud telling them. You can use them and you can sort of parlay with them to your own benefit, but when it comes to it, they're just cattle, right? That's the Talmud. And it's not just
most Christians, Zionists.
What's that?
Most of these people would be absolutely appalled. Most of the people who call themselves Zionists would just be completely appalled if they knew any of this. the Christians. They don't have any idea
Right. Yeah.
what the
Oh, yeah.
what the
No, it's-
Talmud says. They just know
Yeah.
Israel's my friend. I stand by Israel. Blah blah blah. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's
But it's so
absolutely crazy. That's evil as it can be.
Yeah, paraphrasing another bit from the Talmud, just so you know sort of how dark it gets. They swear that that Yeshua ben Yosef, so like Jesus, is boiling in a vat of excrement in hell to this day. That's what the Talmud says about Jesus, right? Because he was a heretic and he was a fanatic, and well, he blasphemed God, so that's where he deserves to be according to them, right? So for people, and the thing is the Talmudists, they're not openly, fanatics. They are very quietly and secretly fanatics, and like a lot of them don't even admit that the Talmud exists, right? That's how much these people they lie about their true beliefs, because again, what it boils down to is you and me and anybody that isn't with them isn't even technically human, or certainly far less human than they are. And the sort of argument that was made about the whole HCOS thing back in the 1940s around World War II time, there's a big argument that a lot of those people were sacrificed by the higher ups because they were straying too far from the faith. They were mixing their bloodline with the German bloodline, and so they too were expendable because they too were Goyim cattle, right? So there is that.
We saw the torpedo boats coming. It was the Star of David, oh, good. Because these were unmarked jet aircraft. We didn't know who was attacking us. We thought it was the Arabs. And then we saw the torpedo boats and the Star of David. Oh, man, here's our best friends who are going to come help us. No, they come to sink us.
When you talk about them dropping napalm, and so they did this immediately, what does that do for people that are not aware? What is the purpose of that, and how does the body react to napalm, the chemical agent?
It can burn you severely, and it also can explode your lungs. Very, very hot. I tried to go up and put it out with CO2, and I couldn't do it. They shot up all our fire hoses too. We had no way to fight fires with water at all. They shot them all up
Instantly in that first 25 minutes.
Yes.
So they took out
everything.
Took out their fire hoses, right? But they didn't see the American flag that's 8 by 5 feet. Come on, man. This seems pretty damn deliberate, even if they did take them off of the the war room table or whatever.
the antennas instantly, the fire hoses instantly, so you couldn't take out fire. And during those 25 minutes, what were you doing specifically?
I was getting people off deck, taken to a triage in the mess decks. The whole mess decks was full of people laying on the tables, on the floor. It was a sea of broken and bloodied men. And it continued like that for, like I say, for the entire attack. And then the torpedo boats got up to us. They did, they fired 5 torpedoes at us.
So
honestly, in my opinion, it's a damn miracle that ship wasn't totally sunk and anybody survived it. Honestly, it seems to me that the IDF's goal in that attack was to decimate that ship and put it at the bottom of the international waters, right? And they would have claimed that, it was the Arab states that did the attack. Definitely. And if there were any survivors, they probably would have unalived them too. But it does seem that, maybe some providence was involved here, because if these motherfuckers had their druthers, this dude would not be sitting here talking, right?
All the antennas are taken out. 25 minutes has passed, and they're obviously assuming that you can't communicate your distress. You indicated in your letter, was it before the torpedoes that fortunately somebody had taken one One of those
Yes.
offline.
Terry Haldebardier, he's a third class radioman. He strung a long wire to the only antenna. He took that antenna offline because it wasn't working. So they didn't hit it because they were using heat-seeking missiles to hit all the antennas. Because when they're tuning, they throw off heat, and they took them all out except that one, and he got it. Thank God.
It's a damn miracle they were able to call for help. Basically, is what happened. A damn miracle.
I mean, there's reasons for all this happened, and he got hooked up, rock star, and like I said, went to Vietnam. The Sixth Fleet picked it up. They automatically sent aircraft from the Saratoga and Captain Tully, and before they even hit the horizon, McNamara says, "Bring those aircraft back. Do not help Liberty. Turn around."
So our Secretary of Defense, I mean, this attack could, in theory, since he was able to get over, how long after it started?
Almost immediately. In fact, they could have saved 25 brave American lives, all spies that got killed when the torpedo hit.
But instead,
If they would have just let those planes come help us. But that wasn't the deal. We were set up by our own government to die.
so Robert McNamara, who in interviews thereafter says he doesn't remember a single thing that happened that day. That's what he told the Chicago Tribune. He doesn't remember anything that happened that day. He recalls them back.
Honestly, people like McNamara there should be like lined up and shot, right? Like honestly, that's what should happen. But it makes you wonder what sort of dirt do they have on all these people, right? Because Diddy wasn't the only one having these sort of parties where they would gather up blackmail on people. He wasn't the first one to do that. A lot of people don't remember, but the guy that sort of started the FBI, that's how he got his start, right? Was getting dirt on people and using blackmail in order to leverage himself up the political ladder, basically, right? But so, like, it makes you wonder, a guy like McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense at the time, and I don't know much about him. This was way before my time, obviously, so I don't really know anything about this guy, McNamara, but I would say that it's a potentiality that he had to call them back. Not that he wanted to, but he had to. Otherwise, they were going to expose all the tied up Vietnamese 13-year-old boys he had in his basement or something. Allegedly, hypothetically, right? I'm just making that up off the top of my head.
Ultimately, it didn't matter.
What's that?
I said, ultimately, it didn't matter because they scrambled more jets and LBJ called those jets back.
Right. Yeah. Let's get to that. Yeah.
And then what happened?
Then the America and Tully reconfigured their aircraft, and they sent aircraft again because they went to a different command. They wanted, it was their prerogative to go to a different higher.
Because they're thinking, what do you mean pull us back? Like our American.
Right. And then LBJ gets on the phone. And his exact words were, "I don't give a GD if all those sailors die. I'm not going to embarrass my ally Israel," like I said in the letter. Now, how did he know that if we didn't know it? Who was attacking us?
Right. They didn't know at the time who was attacking them. And Israel didn't know at the time whom they were attacking, right? That's the story. But the president knew? Yeah, okay. So this is clearly, obviously, a false flag, right?
Obviously,
yeah.
So they then have the president of the United States. So this guy's trying to do the right thing, Captain Tully. He's like, we're going to help them. He gets called back by the Secretary of Defense. He's thinking, I'm going to go over his head because this is crazy. And now the president of the United States is saying, I don't care. I don't give a GD if they die. I am not going to embarrass our friend and ally Israel. So he knew.
He knew. And, they destroyed Captain Tully's career, too. They fired him. He got fired for doing that. He was a World War II fighter pilot. very, very highly decorated, good man. In fact, he came to one of our reunions and broke down like a baby and cried. So I'm sorry, I couldn't help you.
And that is a point of contention for me, okay? Because any serviceman, it doesn't matter whether he's, a grunt or a general, they have an obligation to, if they start getting orders that are inherently evil and against their own personal moral code, like, go kill that little girl over there for no reason. Like, if your superior officer gives you that kind of an order, you don't follow it, right? You take the court martial and you do the time if you get time, right? You're not going to obey evil orders, right? And you have an obligation not to, right? You have to use your brain as a soldier, okay? But these higher ups, their career, their future, and maybe even some dirt that these people had on them is way more important. And that is the travesty, right? I mean, and we see this sort of good men being shoved into a corner and silenced using manipulation. And usually it's just as simple as their paycheck, right? A lot of people can just simply be manipulated by holding their paycheck over their head, right? People don't want to lose the house. But then, you have other maybe harder to manipulate people that, but they like them young or something, right? So they get them on camera, they set up a honey trap and get them on camera with somebody young. And now they've got them in their pocket. And they've been doing this for as long, time immemorial, right? I don't know. But this Tully guy, if he would have refused that evil order and went and saved these people, what are they going to do? Court-martial him, ruin his career, harass him for 50 years, and bring him to tears at funerals because he regretted it? No, this is the worst possible outcome, right? This dude has suffered, not this guy that's being interviewed, but the Tully guy who called them people back. He's apparently suffered and regretted this his whole entire life, and still went through the ringer, right? And still ruined his career and publicly was humiliated and regrets all of it to boot. What if he would have done the right thing and refused those orders that he knew were evil for no justification other than to save face for the Israelis, who definitely did this shit on purpose after all? Yeah. Absolute travesty.
It wouldn't let me. And he took that to his grave. He was a broken man.
Oh, I can't even imagine what he went through.
Yeah.
Having to follow orders when the orders were so demonic.
But do you have to? Like, are they going to line you up and summarily shoot you right there? What, are they going to put you in the brig, court-martial you? So what? All those people died because he wanted to prolong his career. I hope you can take your career to heaven, brother.
Yes, absolutely.
So he gets called back again. This time it's from the President of the United States. And now you are seeing torpedo boats with the Star of David. Now you guys know, and you're thinking, amazing, we're about to get saved. We've got these flags inside. We know who these guys are. Fine.
Yeah.
We don't know who's attacking us, but we know these are our friends. When did you notice, wait a second, something's not right here?
When the old man said, prepare for torpedo hit starboard side, I saw 2 torpedoes go aft. Where the other 2 went, I don't know, but I know where one of them went. It hit in the communications spaces and killed 25 brave young men. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today, to be their voice, because we're not going to let them die in vain. There's not many survivors left. They're dying out. And it's our duty as Americans and patriots to take care of them and make sure their lives didn't die in vain. And, all presidents and all Congress, including Donald Trump, has not done anything for us. They're beholden to the Zionist state, AIPAC. Donald Trump's a new president again. I call on Donald Trump to help us. I mean, we gave our lives and our blood for this country at the hands of the Zionists, Israel. And does he stand with Israel, or does he stand with the United States fighting men that were slaughtered that day by the Zionist state and covered up, same with mistaken identity? I call on you, President Trump, to give the USS Liberty the same courtesy we deserve, or any fighting man that was killed that day. But we don't get it because Israel did it. It's fine as long as Israel did it. It's fine. It was a mistaken identity. It wasn't. Admiral Moore, he had the Moore report. It's a very, very detailed report. He's the longest serving admiral in the United States Navy. He served as the European commander and the Pacific commander, and two times as chairman of Joint Chiefs. And he says, I'll never believe it was a mistaken identity. And he called on Congress over and over to have an investigation. Congress says there already has been an investigation. There never has been. There's been a board of inquiry by Admiral Isaac Kidd and his boss, or his underling, JAG officer, Ward Boston. They completed that investigation in 7 days. Should have taken a year. They never even talked to Israel. They took Israel's word instead of ours.
So you're watching, you're on this boat, you see this torpedo hit, that torpedo instantly kills 25 servicemen. And you escape, fortunately, are able to escape this. What is going on in your mind? Because I just am thinking of that moment of consciousness when you think you're going to be saved because you see your friend and your ally, and then suddenly you realize that your friend and your ally is actually killing you, and they're in torpedo boats. So there's no way they know this is an American ship. Right?
Yes.
What's going on in your mind and emotionally in that moment? If you could take yourself back, like how that conscious switch of, wait a second, this is not my friend, I'm being betrayed.
Well, I think Jesus Christ would know a lot about betrayal, and we were betrayed. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm here, is because Jesus Christ didn't want us to die that day. He wanted us. Well, I'll put it this way. God saved us from God's chosen people. That's what he did.
Damn right, man. Well said. I really love this guy, man. Damn right. God saved us from God's chosen people. Hint of sarcasm.
You can definitely tell how seriously he takes this matter.
Yeah, dude ain't playing. Yeah, dude ain't playing.
No.
Exactly what he did. We put over 3 life rafts. That's all we had left. They shot all of our life rafts up. We put 3 over. They shot 2 of them. We were going to put our most seriously wounded in them so they'd have a chance at life. They shot 2 out of the water and took 1 aboard the boat as a trophy of the kill. It's in Haifa somewhere.
Wow. They took 1 aboard, so there's absolutely no way they did not know that this was an American ship. They take 1 on board as a trophy. They're shooting it out. You are now realizing that you cannot help the wounded. Torpedoes are hitting you. What happens next?
Well, when the torpedo hit, we did what we could do for damage control, and we, like I say, put over the life rafts, and they shot them out of the water, and they continued doing that until finally they just quit. And we thought it was over, but it wasn't. They sent over troop carrying helicopters with Marines in it to board our ship, scuttle the ship, and kill us all. I was on the main deck when they were coming over.
What is your?
So they even boarded the ship. Okay. So any sort of plausible deniability that the IDF may have had up to that point where they put boots on the ship. Yeah. So you can't accidentally, mistakenly board a vessel, right? That's just not how that works.
Condition at that moment where
it's like I accidentally got her pregnant, right? And what did you do? Slip and fall, like cock first? You know what I mean? Like
doing on the main deck.
I was on the main deck trying to still get people off the main deck. And then they got there, and this Marine, he had his foot on the skid. I thought they were going to come down in a rope or a ladder or whatever. And I just gave him the finger.
Uh,
And he gave it right back to me and just smiled.
This is an IDF soldier. He smiled at you.
Smiling. Great big smile. And they just took off. The gig was up. I mean, they confessed. Well, mistaken identity. He thought it was the El Gazir, what was a horse transport. And enemy ship. That's what they said. And that was their excuse. And they got by with it because of the crooked government then and now.
Damn right. Yep. Damn right. This shit's got to stop, dude. For real. This shit's got to stop.
I just can't even imagine this. So you're watching your mates die, bleeding, torpedo, napalm, and you make eye contact with this guy thinking he's going to board the ship. You give him the finger, and he gives you the finger back and smiles at you.
Mm-hmm.
And then they leave.
They leave. And we were left out there for 17 hours for help.
This is the part that is so shocking to me because the President of the United States knows that you're under attack. The Secretary of Defense knows that you're under attack. You know that, as you said, Captain Tully tried twice to help save you. They know you're under attack. And you're telling me that after they went away, 17 hours. Take me through what you guys did. How many people at that moment were injured, dying? What was happening on that ship for the next 17 hours?
Well, 2/3 of the crew was either dead or wounded. And Dock Keefer, we had one dock aboard the ship. He had been shot in the abdomen, and both of his knees were shot up. And he operated for 17 hours on people. I helped him in one operation, a guy by the name of Gary Blanchard. He was hit bad. And he says, take my socks off. My feet are hot. So I rubbed his feet, tried to get some circulation. I went over to the side and looked at him, and he says, you think I'm going to die? I said, yeah, I think you are. And Doc cut him open, and he was dead. So that went on all night. Put a few stitches on him and put him over to the side and just kept on doing it.
What were some of the last words? Because I'm sure, as you said, many people died. What did they say? I mean, what were the conversations that you recall?
You know, Candace, I really didn't recall a whole lot about that. I guess I just blocked it out. I do know that the Lieutenant Commander Armstrong, he died in the mess decks. He was hit up bad too, but I remember he was a heavy smoker. I lit him a couple cigarettes, and then I left, and I came back, and he was dead. So the conversation was just helping people. Everybody was able-bodied, helped them. I was in the walking wounded. A lot of them were walking wounded, and all they did was want to help their fellow shipmates. Bravest crew I've ever seen in my life. I mean, we guys come together like none other. We had none to fight back with but our will and our wits, and with God's beautiful hand on us.
And I was going to mention that earlier, and I didn't, but let me mention it now. So on that ship, it had been decommissioned basically. It was just being used as a scientific vessel, basically, or that was the cover story. But they only had 4 50 calibers on it. You know? So like a 50 caliber, you know, that ain't nothing to scoff at. That's a badass machine gun of the time, right? But on a ship like that, it is nothing. Like it's like less than the bare minimum, right? They didn't have diddly squat to begin with. And the IDF took out all 4 of them in the first strafe, right? So any concept that they didn't know that this was an American ship it's absurd, right? They knew it the whole time. This was the plan, obviously. And you know, the fact that I know all about the Gulf of Tonkin and how that got us into the Vietnam War, you know, I have heard about this, but I'd never heard any firsthand accounts until this guy here. So kudos to this guy. I pray that this man is protected and lives long to prosper for sure. Different breed, man.
In fact, when that ship got torpedoed, it was like the hand of God was holding us up, because it was going like that, ready to roll over, and it just stopped.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
And you were just 20 years old. That's just unbelievable.
Yes.
And so 17 hours later, 2/3 of the crew's dead. What happens? What ship did you see first? What was going through your mind?
Well, the first thing we saw was several days later, when Admiral Kidd got there, and we told him everything, what happened, and why didn't you come help us, and this and that. And he took off his stars. He says, "I'm just like your dad." He said, he had 4 or 5 of us in a sick bay at the time. 3 stars out there. He said, "I'm just like your dad. Please tell me everything you saw." We told him about the machining of the life rafts with the machining gun of all the people, the helicopters, everything that went on. And then he put his stars back on. He says, he got beat red, and he got right in my face. He says, "I'm telling you, you better never talk about this again to anybody. I'll make sure you end up in prison, fined, or worse." You know what worse means? I said, "Yes, sir, I do."
And wait a minute, who was it that told him that? Did you catch? I was over here messing with something else that I'm going to pull up after this. But let me just back this up. I'm trying to hear, or let me just ask y'all in the chat, who was it that just told him that? Did y'all catch it? I'll just back it up.
It happens. What ship did you see first? What was going through your mind?
Well, the first thing we saw was several days later, when Admiral Kidd got there, and we told him everything, what happened, and why didn't you come help us, and this and that. And he took off his stars. He says, "I'm just like your dad." He said, he had 4 or 5 of us in a sick bay at the time. 3 stars out there. He said, "I'm just like your dad. Please tell me everything you saw." We told him about the machining of the life rafts with the machining gun of all the people, the helicopters, everything that went on. And then he put his stars back on. He says, he got beat red, and he got right in my face. He says, "I'm telling you, you better never talk about this again to anybody. I'll make sure you end up in prison, fined, or worse." You know what worse means? I said, "Yes, sir, I do." But he did that to everybody. In fact, they split up everybody. They took him to different bases. There was one fellow, his name is Mickey LeMay. He's still got 50 pieces of shrapnel in him right now. They took him to Bremerhaven, Germany, for medical care. He was in a room with a bunch of other people, a lot of different beds. They took him out of that bed. He got his own room, and he was interrogated by an officer. He says, "Your name is no longer LeMay, it's Smith. You know nothing about the USS Liberty. Don't ever talk about it."
So you survive living hell. You watch your mates die. You wait 17 hours, and you're thinking, okay, at least now it's over. And instead, you guys get reprimanded, and you're told, essentially, we'll kill you.
Yes, it's absolutely. In fact, I didn't talk about it until about 42, 43 years ago. I met my second wife. There was an article in the paper by a person by the name of, oh my goodness, Stan White. He was a chief, master chief. And I felt like the whole world had just come off my shoulders, because he was talking. If he was talking, I'm going to start talking. And I haven't shut up since.
Wow. This is just unbelievable.
Good on that, man. Because I think one of the biggest problems that we have these days, this is just my personal opinion, is that too many people fear men, or like fear, people that can definitely do you physical harm, maybe even go so far as to kill you, right? But not enough people seem to fear the creator of all things, the Most High, the one who has dominion over your everlasting soul, right? And I think if more people started living by a code to please the Most High rather than living by a code to ensure their money in the future, we would have a totally different world, right? But that is how they got us. I mean, it is through that Federal Reserve thing it's been such a linchpin of this whole great deception that we find ourselves in now. The Federal Reserve Act is definitely the biggest monetary scam ever conducted on the American people, for sure. Maybe even the biggest monetary scam ever in the history of the world, probably. But it isn't the only element of the Great Deception now, is it? I think one of the biggest spiritual scams, if you will, is definitely the globe Earth deception, right? Because they've convinced us all that we live, stuck to the side of some spinning ball in the infinite void of space, barely worth a mention in the grand scheme of things, right? So like if planet Earth were to disappear today, it wouldn't really make a difference in the grand scheme of things. That is the sort of mindset that they want everybody to have. They want everybody in the mindset that, life isn't special, unique, or sacred in any way. It's merely the end result of happenstance and evolution theory, but certainly nothing divine. There is no purpose to this world or this life. That is the sort of mindset that they want everybody in. And so, in terms of the biggest spiritual heist in history, that's definitely the globe Earth and the sort of Copernican principle, right? The mediocrity principle. But when it comes to the world stage and the sort of military industrial complex scam, this story here is just a microcosm, really. We see this kind of thing, again, as the rule, not the exception. You're not a crazy conspiracy theorist if you hypothesize that perhaps that attack in New York back in 2001 on those two towers, maybe it wasn't as the official narrative claims. 19 Muslim Arabic dudes with box cutters and their "I am a terrorist" cards in their wallet. That's one thing that always gets me about these. That's one thing that always gets me about these narratives is they always find a written manifesto of exactly what the dude is up to, because we all carry written manifestos of exactly what we're up to, don't we? Go ahead, Brad.
In our hip pocket, yeah. This is insane.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So you're all ordered into silence, and how long, you said, before you started speaking? How many years was that from the attack?
Was 41 and 18 years after the fact.
So you stayed silent on this.
And I didn't even tell my wife, Lisa, that I was ever in the military. I even forgot what day it happened. That's how far back I pushed it. And like I say, when I read that article, man, I said, now I'm on it. And I mean, the whole thing is, when your own government betrays you, and still betrays you, and every congressman betrays you, say, what you saw, you really didn't see. What you heard, you really didn't hear. That's pretty bad.
It's a damn travesty, and those sorts of people should be lined up and shot, in my opinion. Like, that's treason of the worst kind, man. Honestly, I mean, like, really, you have to make examples of these sorts of people, dude, or they're just going to keep doing it. Personally, I think we should go ahead.
I was just going to say, they want to talk about insurrectionists, and I got news for folks. Insurrection happened a long time ago. We've already got the enemy running our country. So anytime I'm upset with America, it doesn't have anything to do with America. It has to do with these crooked people that are running it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's that sort of 10-mile square area, Washington, D.C., that is housing the fictitious corporation of the all caps United States of America, that is like a corporation that basically their number one export is death across the world in propaganda and like all kinds of deceptions. Like probably, one of the most evil entities that you could possibly imagine. That's right there in Washington, D.C., right? The United States of America, fictitious sort of straw man corporation that we all sort of feed with our tax dollars, right?
Well, they've been here since the Civil War, at least, if not since the founding of the country. But, that Libra code that they founded there with the Civil War, where it talks about is it says, if some sneaky bastards come into our country and take over the government when nobody's looking, there's a rule that says they don't have to announce it to the public. They just keep on moving on like nothing's changed and nobody knows the difference. And then they don't realize that they're being ruled by their enemy. And that's essentially what's happened.
Right. And so I'll take it even further back. At least this is my opinion. I don't know how much of this is 100% true, but the way that I understand it is, well, first of all, the first part of this is 100% true. George Washington was not the first president of the United States. Okay. So under the Articles of Confederation in the Continental Congress, there were actually 7 dudes for a total of 8 presidencies prior to George Washington becoming president. It's kind of sort of anecdotal, but that's why there's a famous quote by George Washington when they asked him, what shall we call you? And he said, just call me Mr. President, right? It wasn't that he was being witty or he had just coined the phrase president. It's because there were, 8 presidents prior to him in the Continental Congress under the Articles of Confederation, right? And so, in my opinion, this sort of overtaking of the federal government goes all the way back to George Washington, who was your first, in my opinion, Freemasonic shill president, right? If he even actually existed at all. There's a lot of people that question the entire existence of American history going that far back, which, I wasn't there. But if George Washington was a real person, then I know that he wasn't the first president. And there is a reason why he is sort of revered as the first president. It's because, that's when the basically the British crown and the crown's conglomerate of all the European countries at the time sort of had their shill in the highest office of the land in the United States, at least in my personal opinion. That's my opinion. And so, yeah, when you get all the way to, like the Civil War, there's definitely a lot of misinformation in our culture at the time right now about the Civil War and about emblems of the Civil War, like the Confederate flag, which has sort of taken on this sort of evil undertone, or like evil, what's the word I'm looking for? Connotation to it, right? Which, I don't think that that's there. I think that we've all been sort of lied to about all of these wars in the past, because it is the victors of the wars that write the history books. And, usually the winners of wars are the ones that play the dirtiest, right? And so the thing about dirty players is they are experts of aggrandizing themselves, in the public eye,
They're calling us liars, Nazis, and Jew haters, our own Congress. And I tell you what, I'd like to call out Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro with this conspiracy theory stuff. If you think it's a conspiracy, debate me live on TV. I'd be glad to debate you. And my shipmates will be there too if you want them. Debate us if you think it's a conspiracy theory. Or do you have the courage? I don't think you got the courage. I think you're cowards.
Can I explain the USS Liberty incident? Sure. So the USS Liberty incident is very frequently used by...
First off, let me say, I just can't stand, dude, but oh my God, okay.
By anti-Semites who suggest that Israel deliberately targets American ships and then pays no penalty. So both American naval records and Israeli Air Force records suggest that there was a case of mistaken identity wherein USS Liberty was in the Mediterranean in a place they were not supposed to be. Israel thought that it was an Egyptian ship and shot it. That's the actual full story. Now, there are a bunch of conspiracy theories on actually both sides of this. There's a conspiracy theory on the American side that suggests that Israel, for no reason that can be discerned, decided to shoot up an American ship to accomplish
for no reason that can be discerned, right? Because who could ever think of a motivation to do something like that, right, Ben Shapiro? Wow. I mean, I guess maybe if you've got your blinders on to the extent. What's that?
They just need him to say it out loud so that other people have permission to believe it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when you have a sort of big microphone that is given to some of these talking heads by the entities like YouTube and the other social media platforms that push propaganda, yeah, they have a lot of sway with your average Joe who is just, busy with their own thing, and they trust these people. And so when somebody like this says, it's just a conspiracy theory, he'll never debate somebody that was actually there because he's just a talking head. He's spouting a narrative that he wants people to believe, but he'll never actually be able to back it up with anything other than, maybe an apology to the vets.
No.
I think Ben Shapiro kind of owes the vets an apology. I'm offended, right? And that's really the only currency that gets through to some of these people. I'm offended at Ben Shapiro for dissing these, for calling these honest vets conspiracy theorists. I think the conspiracy theory is what Ben Shapiro is saying.
So long as he can say it out loud.
Yeah. Right.
Explain what?
So long as he says it out loud, then everybody else who doesn't want to look at it has permission.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
A theory that I've not seen a lot of support for, that the USS Liberty was being used as a transmission vessel to send Israeli military locations to
because I see it says right here, if you read this, it says that it was just mapping the ocean floor. See? Yeah, it was just mapping the ocean floor.
Oh, I can't stand that guy, dude. I swear to God, he gets on my but to sit there and cook to the mainstream narrative, how could you be such an NPC and be so wildly successful? Just think about that for 10 seconds.
Egyptians during the 67 war, and Israel knew that and shot it. Again, I think the evidence is lacking on both of those things. And there have been multiple naval investigations of the USS Liberty incident. They all come down on the same side.
The Navy investigated itself, and the Navy found that the Navy didn't do anything wrong. So, perfect. That's all we need to know, right, Ben Shapiro? Because you're such a good researcher.
Is that this is a mistaken case of allied, quote-unquote, friendly fire.
Anyways, you guys, want to remind you about Hallow. With that said, and speaking about Christians and how much we are and being gas with God, when you went out there thinking you might be out there defending the state of Israel, only to recognize that your country betrayed you, presumably to stage a false flag attack.
There was a submarine. The Russians were there too. If our ship goes down, Israel was going to get nuked by Russia. And that's a fact. It's on tape by the people that were there. There were also the USS Andrew Jackson there and the USS Amberjack, our submarines that didn't come help us. I heard they filmed it from the Amberjack. They probably got the film right now. There's so many we got,
and you could try to do Freedom of Information Act request on something like that, but you best be a millionaire, right? Or like a billionaire, because the Freedom of Information Act FOIA requests are a joke, especially when you're dealing with top secret classified matters of national security. And by national security, we mean the psychopaths getting caught, right? That's what we mean by national security. We wouldn't want to catch the psychopaths doing their shenanigans, right? That would just make way too much sense, wouldn't it?
FOIA request right now from a federal judge in Washington. She's going to decide whether we can get the records or not.
To decide. To me, that's crazy. Shouldn't it be people that don't have a vested interest in the deep state, potentially? or people that don't have some sort of a blackmail dirt vector on them that they can be manipulated by the deep state, right? Because that's what we find time and time and time again. And again, it's not just Diddy, it's not just Epstein. This is a sort of business model that these people have been using for a long time. Yeah.
In a few days. And this has been going on for 2 or 3 years, trying to get, well, it's been 57 years total, but working on it for the last 41, 42, 43 years, collectively with the rest of the crew, we've been trying to get this done. And this is the closest we've ever come to getting something, but they don't want the records out. The CIA is blocking it right now. They said they do not want to let that out. It's a matter of national security. If it's so easy to explain, how could it be national security?
And isn't that what they cry every time? And it's, that facade has faded. Like, the jig is up, deep state, and the deep state does watch my podcast too, whatever. Deep state watches my streams for sure. But yeah, isn't that what it always does though? It is like it's like one of the only things that they know how to do. Go ahead.
The fact that there's so much secrecy is just a clue in the first place that we're not as free as we think we are. Because if we were, everything wouldn't be a state secret.
Yeah. But, it's so many years on now, and we already know the truth. But for the CIA, even though most of these people are like long retired and many of them dead and gone, the current CIA administration is still actively blocking this, which to me, that ought to tell you something about the CIA, right? They are inherently evil, and I'm sorry, but they got to go, man. They got to go, right? JFK was saying it before they allegedly popped him in broad daylight, in Texas down there. But the CIA's got to go, man. But that's clearly evident. Anybody that's doesn't have their head entirely up their ass would probably agree with me on that. And there's so many other government agencies that you could say the same damn thing about. We mentioned the Department of Education. Trump has talked about nixing the Department of Education on day one, which I say hallelujah. And I also say don't stop there. I say continue on, my brother. Continue on with, the likes of the IRS and the Federal Reserve. Even though it is not federal and holds no reserves, we need to relinquish their authority over the coinage here, folks. 100%. And don't stop with those handful of things either.
If it's so cut and dry that they thought it was a mistake, there's no mistake, and we can prove it.
How many survivors are still alive?
Oh, I don't know, probably 50.
Just 50.
Out of 294. So it's, they just didn't attack our ship. They attacked you, all of you guys, all of America. They attacked us. It was an act of war.
Yep.
And war crimes, and they don't want to investigate it.
I want to speak a bit about Lyndon Baines Johnson, because there is a picture that seems to be emerging, and so I guess I'll sort of ask questions, because there's other big events from around that time period that are similarly classified in a way that doesn't really make sense. Lyndon Baines Johnson, the nation did not vote for him to be president of the United States, obviously.
Yes.
JFK was assassinated. And it is a fact that prior to his assassination, he was adamant that he wanted AIPAC, which I think was going by a different name at that time, to register as a foreign agent, and that they had ignored his demand that they register as a foreign agent. And then when he was shot a couple of months later, he no longer had to register. They no longer had to register as a foreign agent.
That's a good point. I'm going to grab a drink, y'all. I'll be white-black. Although, I do have my reservations about the whole mainstream narrative involving the JFK assassination. Um, sure, maybe it's just as we all believe. And I'm not saying like who done it. What I'm saying is there is a potentiality that the whole thing was faked, right? And like, why would they do something like that? Why would they fake that sort of an assassination? Well, they sort of killed in effigy, the conspiracy theorists gaining power and then wanting to do something about like nixing the CIA and the IRS and things like that. And of course, so they murder him in the street. Okay. But also, was JFK really stupid enough to go announcing his plans and shouting his plans from the rooftops to nix the CIA and do those sorts of things? I mean, shouldn't he have just done them quietly and just passed them, like gotten them through? I don't know. It just seems more, or at least it seems possible, in my opinion, that they could have faked the JFK assassination, and dude was just really an actor like all the other politicians are. There are a lot of people who suspect that Jimmy Carter may have been played by the same dude who played JFK. Maybe that sounds crazy and far out there. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but wouldn't it be funny? I mean, we do know that they play these sorts of roles all the time. I mean, there's several examples of this that I could list for, big public figures that I believe have played multiple roles in the public eye. They do this sort of thing for subliminal manipulation. It's all quite fascinating and complex if you think about it, but at the end of the day, a lot of it is very much speculative, right? This here is crazy though. Like what dude's saying, I believe old cat 100%. Like I don't doubt not one word of what dude says. I believe everything dude says right here. And like, so maybe I'm prone to being manipulated by dude, but I don't know. I usually have a pretty good sense when someone is bullshitting, and dude seems to be 100% on the up and up. Like no reason to doubt my brother, right?
Agent. It is also a fact that leading up to his death, he was having fights, which they have not declassified, arguments with the prime minister of Israel at that time, Ben-Gurion. They've, again, not declassified any of those conversations, so we don't know what it was that they were arguing about, but I would imagine Lyndon Baines Johnson would have known that he had this sort of contentious relationship, obviously, with them trying to implement AIPAC and not wanting it to be registered as a foreign agent, and obviously him having arguments as the number 2 guy. You would think that he would know this. And before Muammar Gaddafi, the president of Libya, was murdered by us, arming insurgents, he gave a speech in front of the UN where he demanded that they investigate the killing of JFK. And he said, everybody knows that he was trying to stop their nuclear armament. He spoke about the nuclear reactor.
You guys all know my position on nuclear armament, right? So for those of you that are watching that maybe don't know my personal position on nuclear armament, is that in a nutshell, the atom, the theoretical particle with the little subatomic protons, neutrons, and electrons, the atom, right? Many atoms create molecules, like the atom. I don't believe in atoms. Like I don't believe they actually exist. I believe in chemistry and the sort of observations behind things like atomic weight, and I understand that chemistry is definitely a thing. But the idea of atoms, the sort of atomic theory, is just that. It's a theory. Like there is no sort of solid evidence for atoms actually being real. Okay. And so in my opinion, without getting into that here, there is sufficient evidence to support the claim that atoms don't even actually exist. Okay. And so an atomic bomb involves splitting an atom in order to create sort of a chain reaction to thusly split off other atoms in a sort of enriched radioactive isotope, like enriched uranium or plutonium or something. Okay, so this is not to say that they can't make big explosions happen. They certainly can. The military can blow shit up in a grand fashion, right? But the concept of like something in a little suitcase blowing up an entire city is fiction. Okay, that is nonsense. Never going to happen. Now, what they probably will end up doing in our lifetimes, I'm just sort of waiting for the day for them to do it, is they could definitely put a bunch of like dynamite or equivalent, so like thousands of tons of dynamite or equivalent in a localized area, say like underneath of a stadium or something like that, and then detonate all those hundreds of thousands of tons of dynamite or equivalent all at once and claim that is a nuclear attack. Okay, they can definitely do something like that. They can definitely firebomb a city and claim that it was nuked and then show you a bunch of videos of it being nuked, and those videos are often faked. Historically, you know, we see documentary evidence of nuclear bombs being tested and things like that. And what the military was on record doing was actually faking those. So they would literally get a bunch of dynamite all in one place and ignite it, film it, and, you know, claim that it is proof of a nuclear bomb. Okay. There is so much scientism and fakery and, just the typical nonsense that we see with the likes of NASA surrounding the whole Manhattan Project or whatever it is, surrounding the whole nuclear armaments thing. And really, you know, the whole nuclear arms race between Russia and the United States at the same time that the sort of space race was going on. It is really, when you dig into it, it is just more of the same. If you talk to, like, you look at interviews of the people who used to work at the place developing the nuclear bomb, they were all very highly paid, you know, Ivy Leaguers. But to hear them tell it, they didn't know what they were doing at work. They said things like they were literally there just paid out the ass to cut holes in the donuts, which is to say they were looking busy, not accomplishing a damn thing, which is a running theme that we see with the likes of NASA and government in general. All right. So, like, in my opinion, and again, this is just me, I don't lose any sleep over atomic, you know, nuclear holocaust or anything like that. It's not going to happen. Now, that isn't to say that America itself will never be attacked. I think that there is a very good chance that America will be attacked. Okay, I would say that it's almost a certainty, right? It's not that I want to see that or anything. It's just, you know, I believe it's going to happen eventually. But I don't lose any sleep over nuclear bombs going off. Like, I'm so over that because, again, you know, my thinking on this is if atoms don't exist, then atomic bombs cannot exist. It's pretty simple. Okay, and prove me wrong. Do your own research. Don't listen to me. Don't trust me on anything. But I sleep pretty damn good at night, knowing that the Earth is flat and motionless, not spinning around at thousands and millions of miles an hour. 5 directions at once along curved linear trajectories, and also nuclear bombs couldn't possibly exist, according to me.
And he had heavily suggested in that speech in the UN that that was perhaps that could have been the reason that he was arguing with the prime minister. Of course, we'll never know. And so it's quite shocking to know that information, to realize that JFK got killed, and to also know that the person who allegedly shot him, Lee Oswald Harvey, said he didn't shoot him, didn't kill him, and then he was shot by a guy named Jacob Rubens.
Lee Harvey Oswald, one of his last words was him claiming to news cameras that he was a patsy and that he didn't do it, and then he was killed in police custody.
Who Muammar Gaddafi alleges was also an Israeli
She's talking
national.
about Jeffrey Epstein. So Gaddafi was claiming that Epstein was an Israeli national, right? And he did have the ties with AIPAC for sure. And then Gaddafi wound up dead pretty soon thereafter, from what I gathered.
Maybe he had dual citizenship. I'm not sure because, again, we don't have the files. I'm just speaking about what has been said in the public sphere. It's kind of shocking that Lyndon Baines Johnson would be such an ally to Israel, so much so that he would tell people, I don't care if American sailors die, I'm not going to embarrass Israel, which means he didn't inherit JFK's frustration with the nation.
He did not. He, if you remember, he says, you had a friend in JFK of Israel, but I'm going to be a much better friend. You have a better friend than you ever did.
You know what? Actually, I don't know if you had read this article. This really shocked me. This was published in the Jerusalem Post in 2008. The article is entitled "A Friend Indeed." I'll just read a bit of it. A few weeks ago, the Associated Press reported the newly released tapes from U.S. President Lyndon Johnson's White House office, which showed LBJ's, quote, personal and often emotional connection to Israel. The news agency pointed out that during the Johnson presidency, the United States became Israel's chief diplomatic ally and primary arms supplier. But the news report does little to reveal the full historical extent of Johnson's actions on behalf of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. Most students of the Arab-Israeli conflict can identify Johnson as the president during the 1967 war, but few know about LBJ's actions to rescue hundreds of endangered Jews during the Holocaust, actions that could have thrown him out of Congress and into jail. Indeed, the title of righteous Gentile is certainly appropriate in the case of the Texan, whose centennial year is being commemorated this year. It then goes on and speaks about how...
I just wonder if LBJ was one of those cryptos, right? So where like he would pretend to be Christian, but like really he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. I don't know. But there were a lot of those that had sort of infiltrated American politics at that time and even to this day, right? I don't know. I wonder. Johnson is sort of a generic last name, isn't it?
He, while serving as a young congressman, arranged for visas to be supplied.
What's that?
Nick's gonna go move up wood, and he's just gonna let you know it's gonna be loud. So.
Okay. Well, I'm still streaming, and I'll be done here pretty soon.
Okay.
Okay. I gotta put this back. All right.
Applied to Jews that were in Warsaw and oversaw the apparently illegal immigration of hundreds of Jews through the port of Galveston, Texas. A key resource for uncovering LBJ's pro-Jewish activity is the unpublished 1989 doctoral thesis by a student named Louis Gamelak, a University of Texas student. And he speaks about LBJ's foreign affairs background in this piece, and they were able to confirm through other historians and interviews with his wife and family members and political associates that the research was accurate. It says, quote, research into Johnson's personal history indicates that he inherited his concern for the Jewish people from his family. His aunt, Jessie Johnson Hatcher, a major influence on LBJ, was a member of the Zionist Organization of America. According to Gamelak, Aunt Jessie had nurtured LBJ's commitment to befriending Jews for 50 years. As a boy, he watched his politically active grandfather, Big Sam, and father, Little Sam, seek clemency for Leo Frank. This says the Jewish victim of blood libel. He's actually, he murdered a young Catholic girl during Passover in 1913. I'll have to fact check that. But they present him as a victim of a blood libel. Johnson's later told friends that Lyndon's family hid in their cellar while his father and uncle stood guard with shotguns. Oh, they say that he often cited Leo Frank's lynching as a sort of his opposition. But it's interesting because people, I don't think, knew this, that LBJ was Jewish, that his aunt was involved in the Zionist organization, and also that he pressured the administration, apparently, to have tighter ties with AIPAC. So we can probably trace, when we are speaking about AIPAC, the marriage, I would say, between the United States government and AIPAC, we can attribute that to Lyndon Baines Johnson. How does it make you feel to know that actually, he was in fact more loyal to Israel?
Oh, absolutely. Much more loyal. In fact, on June the 8th, when our ship got hit, in his bed was a Irgun agent, Matilda Krim.
Really?
Really.
Unbelievable.
True story.
Yeah, it even says that Johnson raised substantial sum for arms for the Jewish underground fighters in Palestine. He was doing all of this illegally. He armed the Jewish underground of quote unquote freedom fighters and did all of this.
So here's, and I know what a lot of y'all are probably thinking, like, wow, John the Morgile is such an idiot. Like, he actually thinks JFK might have been, staged assassinated, right? Because look, clearly here's the motive. LBJ took over and right? But what if, like, to me, it makes way more sense, or at least it's a potentiality that, JFK was never intended to make it all the way through his presidency. And he was there to get the votes, and, talk a good game and maybe even do a few good things. But then he was out of the picture one way or another, whether he was actually assassinated or whether that was staged, right? And so that could have been the plan all along. I mean, I don't know. One way or another, JFK was definitely out of the picture. However, if he did end up playing Jimmy Carter later on, decades later, then he couldn't have died, right? Just saying. I don't know if that's true, but there are a lot of people that think that is true. I don't know, man. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, nothing surprises me anymore.
Alongside his closest advisors were strong pro-Israel advocates. Benjamin Cohen, who 30 years earlier was the liaison between the Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis and Chaim Weizmann, and Abe Fortas, the legendary Washington insider. I mean, that's just, how did we go from a president who wanted to stop this to a president that was involved in the underground and was pushing our government to get more involved with Israel? It leads, I mean, it certainly, I think it's fair for people to wonder what it is that is classified and that they're so afraid to release to the public about JFK's remarkably suspicious death.
Yes, his death was not by a lone gunman, in my belief. In fact, I saw the day that Oswald got killed by Rubenstein. He says, "I'm nothing but a patsy, nothing but a patsy." And he was a patsy. Yeah. So there's so much to be said for that. And the USS Liberty is covered up just as deep, and it all goes right back to Israel. Is our country really America first, or is it Israel first?
Are we an occupied nation?
I think we're an occupied nation. And
I'm not going to play this interview in its entirety because I don't want it to be considered as a replacement for the original. So I think I'm going to cut the interview off here, but there are still a couple more things that I want to go through with you guys. So I think I'll let this run for another minute or two and see if there's any gems come out of it real soon. But if not, then I'm going to cut the interview and let me check on Brad. I probably lost Brad again too, huh? Let's check. Did I lose you, Brad? Yeah, I totally did. That's all cool, man. No worries. But yeah, there's a couple other things that I want to try to share with you guys, and I will check in on y'all in the chat. What's up, Sea Lightning 300? Hey, Sea Lightning 300, man. I've been trying to link up with you. I wanted to get some further information from you, what you were telling me about on the stream the other day. So if you don't mind, man, send me a text, and that way we can link up. Text me on my phone. I'll put the number here in the chat. Don't just call me, because if you just call me, then I will. I might not get it because I just get so many telemarketing calls. If I don't recognize the number, I usually don't answer it. There's my number right there in the chat. Okay, so a couple things. Oh, well, let me, Admiral Kidd. Yeah, I wrote that down too. Yeah, Admiral Kidd. That's the one right there, ain't it? Let me get back to this video. I am going to play it another minute, but I don't necessarily want to play the whole thing. And I think we've got through the parts that I wanted to get through, but I really hate to cut this guy off. I mean, he really is he's got a lot to say, right?
You know, look at all the wars. Okay, let's just go back to the Iraq War and Afghanistan War. They were fought all for the greater good of Israel. That's my belief, and it's a lot of the people's beliefs too. They sacrificed men. World War I, it's a war machine. You know, like Eisenhower warned, but the military-industrial complex. And he was absolutely right. I remember that because I was a kid then.
If y'all remember, I actually played that farewell address a few weeks ago on a stream, and it was way longer of a version than I was looking for. I was just really looking to play a specific segment of it, but it was pretty impactful farewell address. And I think, dude, Dwight Eisenhower felt bad because he had kind of sold the American people down the fucking river to the military-industrial complex.
I mean, I think it's difficult for me, and why I say that this has been such a turning point. It's difficult for me to take seriously now any of the politicians who declare themselves to be America first. I mean, just to be clear, Congress passed through in the blink of an eye to ensure that people would learn about October 7th in school.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And yet I went through school, I graduated college, I have 2 degrees, and I had never learned about the USS Liberty in its entire context until I received your letter.
Yeah, I had never heard anything about that either. So let's see. So what there is, so there are 15 minutes left on this, and little Boogaloo is crying to go out, even though I just walked her before the stream started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this play, walk Boogaloo Shrimping Business, and then I'll be back probably right around the same time that this ends. I've got, 15 minutes on it. So y'all just enjoy the rest of this, and I'm going to walk little Lily Lou Frog Dog, and I'll be back.
Yep, it was covered up, and it's not in the history books, which it should be. It's a very important part of history. Now, something very interesting, back in the 80s, I did a speaking deal with the old Spotlight newspaper. And the 2 older gentlemen, they were entrepreneurs in Wisconsin, Grafton. They read it, and they sent me a letter and said, we're building a new library, and we were gonna call it the Grove Library. Now we want to call it the USS Liberty Memorial Library. And the whole Milwaukee area, everybody around there, the Jewish population says, no, you cannot do that because it's anti-Semitic to bring up USS Liberty.
It's anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic. And the Grove brothers said, the heck with you guys. They've already put $1 million up. And they said, we'll just take our money out. And then the town said, no. We'll name it the USS Liberty Memorial Library. Because he threatened to take all the money, both of them threatened to take all the money away from it. So, and we had to get this, SWAT teams on the roofs, bomb sniffing dogs, because we were all threatened. They were going to get us right there for dedicating the survivors, dedicating that. That's when Pete McCluskey, former Congressman McCluskey, was there, and he spoke at the dedication, as did others.
Wow. So you had told me that you have been threatened by the Mossad. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, I was in California with my wife. We were going out there to visit my son. He was graduating from Bud's SEAL, and we were in a restaurant. Well, we were at the bar getting a drink, waiting to get our table, and this guy come up and got on my right side of me. He said, "Oh, you were on the Liberty, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" And he said, "I know a lot." And he had a big watch, and he put it right up in front of my face. I said, "Get that out of my face, man. What is it, a camera or a speaking device? Or why is he going to squirt me with something? I don't know." And then he said, "Listen, I know everything about you. I'm a Mossad agent. And the best thing for you to do is just shut up." My wife heard that. She come over me, and boy, she gave him, I mean, whoa, I can't tell you. And then security had to take us up to our room and make sure everything was okay. And I went down the next morning, and the guy, pretext, he told everybody he was a doctor. He'd been there a couple of days before. But he was waiting on me and my wife, is what he was doing. How he found out we were there, I don't know. It could have been, they traced us somehow, credit card or who knows.
That's just incredible.
It is.
They have a remarkable ability to be on the ground when big events take place. Like, it was confirmed that the Mossad was on the ground the day that JFK got shot. It has been confirmed that they were on the ground recording, at least according to ABC News, who investigated this the day that 9/11 took place, which you could say was obviously the beginning of us being involved in these never-ending wars in the Middle East. And obviously the USS Liberty, they got caught executing another false flag at the exact same time, the Lavon affair, which they were going to murder Americans in order to drag us into war with Egypt. So I don't know if that was before or after the US Liberty, but there's a lot of, I mean, you can't say that Israel is not involved in false flags, because the Lavon affair proves that they are.
King David Hotel.
King David Hotel means exactly proves that they are. You survived what you believe to be a false flag attack, and yet we have people in America who get on stage and refer to them as our greatest friend and ally. I mean, how does that make you feel to just even hear that, to hear people say they're our greatest friend and ally? And by the way, I want to be clear, I count myself among those people. For the first 6 years of my career, I genuinely had no idea.
Most people don't. And it makes me furious. It really does. They're not our best friend. They're not our ally. They got more money when they murdered my shipmates than they ever got in their entire existence. And the Israelis said they paid $6 million. They didn't pay $6 million to our ship. Our own government did. The ship alone was worth $40 million. And they settled for $6 million. The most seriously wounded got some. And they very well should have been, of course, the dead. Most of the crew got $200 and an order to shut up. And I was ordered to sign that, where I could never sue Israel or the United States, which I signed it gladly.
You signed it, because you were ordered to sign it, which means you could never sue Israel or the United States for what you survived.
Yeah, and that was under duress. And I don't think it's worth the paper it's written on. I don't think it's worth anything.
No, of course, it's not worth anything.
But that's what they did to us, and they continue to do it. They can't wait till we're dead. We're all dying out. We're getting older. I'm 78, and I got guys that are 85, close to 90. Some of them can't even get out of their house much anymore, or they got disease or whatever. We lost 3 or 4 in the last year, cancer and things like that. And but I'm not going to give up till my dying breath. I'm going to be here speaking the truth. And we plan on trying to get together a speaking tour around the country for survivors to speak to the public and tell them about our government and the Israeli government. As far as I'm concerned, Candace, they set us up Israel were the hitmen, and our government paid them to hit us. And then when we didn't sink, they tell us that it was mistaken identity. Us, the survivors, that they thought we were somebody else. They shot 2 of our flags down, and we put up another one, 7 by 13. They say they didn't see that one either. 7 by 13, that's a big flag. They call it holiday colors. And that's what we flew into Malta, 1,000 miles away. We went from that torpedo hit 1,000 miles away with a 40 by 40 foot hole in the ship, hoping we'd sink.
Well, what I can tell you is that this has completely changed a lot for me. I just, first and foremost, just want to apologize to you. Like, I'm genuinely embarrassed at my ignorance, and it's confounding for me that I thought that I was on the side of the party of, truth and America first and patriots and caring about our veterans. And I'm realizing now that so many of these people are cowards. They're cowards. They know the truth. They lie to people as they're coming up in this movement, and they are completely occupied. There are some that are brave, obviously, Thomas Massey, but I do want to offer to you that I promise you, as long as you live, I will hold a candle for the USS Liberty. You forever have a platform. If I have a platform, I almost feel ashamed of myself. And I thought to myself this year, oh my gosh, I'm getting so attacked by the Zionist media because I had a heart over the Palestinian children that were dying. And I realized I had to survive digital attacks. I mean, you survived.
Yeah.
What you survived is unbelievable. And I first and foremost, I know that you have an organization, so I want to pledge to you that personally, my family will donate $40,000 every year to your organization. And I'm asking if every single person who is watching this right now, and this will be in the millions, if every single person gives $1, just $1, we can keep their organization going. We can give them what they need to speak about this, and we can show them that despite the fact that we may all be existing under a government that is occupied, this is not who we are as Americans or people worldwide, because we have an audience all over the world who I think is similarly starting to wonder how many of our nations are occupied by lobbying from Zionists and spending money. Can you?
And I think it even goes deeper than that. When they've got the monetary system under their control, and when I say they, I mean spiritual wickedness in high places, right? They got us by the balls. Like it matters not who makes the laws. If you give them control of the country's currency, they've got the lawmakers in their pockets, right? So they sort of are the de facto lawmakers, right?
You tell my audience a bit about your organization.
Yes, our organization is veterans and like-minded people, family members. You can go to usslibertyveterans.org, usslibertyveterans.org. And this is a brand new site we put up. It's very technical. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about it. It takes a lot people a lot smarter than me, but they got people doing it. And you can donate there. You can go through, look at pictures. You can read articles, the Moore Report. And I was just thinking about Ward Boston, the JAG. It was with Admiral.
Yeah. So anyway, dude plugged his website. That's a good wrap on that. Now there is another article that I wanted to share with you guys, and I've got it pulled up on my phone here. So let me come out of this real fast, and I will check in on y'all in the chat real fast as well. There we go. Alrighty. Yeah, so, and I guess I've got a huge lag. What's up, Headley Man BC, Adam Price, Shot, and Crystal Jam? What's up, y'all? I'm going to try to meet y'all over on the YouTube chat before I go into the next thing. Well, no. Instead of that, because honestly, I'm only one person, man. I'm not going to meet y'all in the YouTube chat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to email myself this article link, because there's no way I'm going to get that typed out properly the first go around. Bear with me, you guys. I am just emailing myself this link so that I can share this article with y'all. Shit. Yeah, I know. I'm slow, y'all. I'm slow, you guys. I'm so slow. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, here we go. Okay, and I guess what I'll do also is share my screen, so at least we're looking at the same thing. I think that'll be better. Okay. So this is vocal.media, the dark side of Talmud. So according to this, the Talmud is the central text of Judaism. Okay. So like a lot of Christians is just stopping the article right there after the first three words or whatever. A lot of Christians, including this one right here, sort of historically have assumed that the defining religious text of Judaism is the Old Testament, right? Torah. But according to this article right here, again, this is not my claim. This is vocal.media's claim that the Talmud is the central text of Judaism. So I don't know if that's true or not. They say it's been a topic of controversy for centuries. While many consider it as a source of wisdom and guidance, others argue that it goes against humanity and it's an evil book. This article explores the reasons why Talmud is against humanity and provides references to support this claim. Talmud is a compilation of Jewish law and traditions comprising two parts, the Mishnah and the Gemara. The Mishnah is a collection of oral laws that were passed down from Moses, and Gemara is a commentary on the Mishnah by Jewish scholars. Talmud covers a wide range of topics, including ethics, philosophy, history, and theology. One of the main criticisms against Talmud is that it promotes discrimination and prejudice against non-Jews. In the Talmudic tradition, non-Jews are referred to as goyim and are often depicted as being inferior to Jews. For example, in Sanhedrin 57a, it is stated that the birth of a goy is like the birth of a wild animal. This statement implies that non-Jews are not fully human and don't have the same value as Jews. Moreover, Talmud also promotes violence and aggression towards non-Jewish people. In Avodah Zarah 26b, it is stated that, quote, even the best of the Gentiles should be killed, end quote. This statement implies that non-Jews should be exterminated,
even if they're good people. This kind of attitude towards non-Jews has led to many instances of violence and discrimination against them throughout history. Another issue with the Talmud is that it condones and even encourages unethical behavior towards others. For example, in Baba Kama 11.3a, it is stated that, quote, if a Jew finds an object lost by a Gentile or a heathen, it does not have to be returned, end quote. This statement implies that it's okay to steal from non-Jews because they're not considered to be equal to Jews. This kind of behavior goes against basic human rights and ethical principles. Furthermore, Talmud also promotes sexism and misogyny. In Kedushin, not the Ryu special move from Street Fighter II, the Hadouken, but the Kedushin 29b, it stated that, quote, a woman is a sack full of excrement. This statement implies that women are inferior to men and have no value. And that was a direct quote, by the way. Such statements have contributed to the oppression of women in Jewish society and the wider world. And, you know, I've mentioned this, stopping from the article for a second, but I've mentioned this in several videos that, you know, prior to Yeshua, Jesus entering the world stage, you know, a long time ago, women had it pretty rough, man. And for whatever reason, you know, after Yeshua's walk, you know, the world has definitely been changed. And I think that women, you know, they owe a lot. I think that our society in general, and women especially, owe a lot to Jesus that he doesn't necessarily get credit for. I don't know, whatever. Moreover, Talmud promotes cruelty towards animals. In Baba Metzia 32b, it stated that, quote, it is permitted to deceive a Gentile in matters of business. This statement implies that it's okay to cheat non-Jews in business dealings. This kind of behavior goes against the principles of honesty and fairness. In conclusion, the teachings of the Talmud have been a topic of controversy for many centuries, and while many consider it as a source of wisdom and guidance, others argue that it goes against humanity and is an evil book. Talmudic tradition refers to non-Jews as goyim, and the book often depicts them as inferior to Jews, promoting violence and aggression towards them. And I think calling the Talmud a book isn't really correct because it's several, like Talmud is probably dozens of books that were originally, that it was all in a oral tradition, like it was forbidden by the, you know, the Hebrew shaman to publish, you know, write down the Talmud. It was always historically an oral tradition. And there are some, I've heard it argued that much of the Talmud, or like some of the Talmud, or maybe the initiation of the Talmud was, so like when Moses went up to the mountain to get the 10 Commandments, right? So like that part of the story. While he was away, you know, they built the golden calf, right? And then so when he came back, like it was all a big kerfuffle or whatever, right? But so apparently, from what I gather, so while he was up on the mountain and the shaman were down there, you know, kicking rocks, waiting on him, and ultimately building that golden calf, that parts of the Talmud were whispered into the ears of certain shaman by like demons, right? So I don't know how true that is, or how, like, you know, how accurate that is to the accounts that I've picked up on in my time of research, but I don't know. Do with that little tidbit what you will. Hang on, I'm starting to get a bit overheated. Sorry about that, y'all. Woof. It's cold outside, and so I'm like bundled up in layers, and all of a sudden. Anyway, furthermore, the Talmud promotes sexism and misogyny by presenting women as inferior to men, contributing to the oppression of women in Jewish society and the wider world. Additionally, the book promotes cruelty towards animals, implying that it's acceptable to mistreat and deceive them. However, it is essential to note that not all Jews adhere to the teachings of Talmud, right? And there are many who reject its more controversial aspects. And yet, then you've also, from my opinion, you've got the Jews for Jesus, right? Which is a whole other thing. Many Jewish communities have interpreted Talmud in a more humane and compassionate way, focusing on its ethical teachings and principles rather than its more problematic aspects. Furthermore, it is important to remember that every religion has its controversial and problematic aspects, and it's up to us as individuals to interpret and follow them in a way that aligns with our own moral values. Indeed. Finally, the Talmud is a book, or a series of books rather, that promotes discrimination, violence, unethical behavior, sexism, and cruelty towards animals. It goes against the principles of humanity and is arguably an evil set of books. While some Jewish people reject these teachings, it is crucial to address these problematic aspects to create a more just and compassionate society. So just because we're calling out certain people for evil who happen to be Jewish doesn't necessarily mean that we hate all Jewish people, right? Just because I'm married to a woman who is partially of Jewish descent doesn't mean anything more than, to me personally, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I don't know. I've never looked at race as that important, honestly. I think that we should judge people based on the contents of their character rather than the color of their skin or their outward sort of, claims or whatever. Anyways, so that wraps up that one. And I think that covers it, y'all. I do appreciate you guys hanging with me today and joining the stream. I had a lot of fun sharing this with you. What a heavy topic, man. I mean, wow, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I pretty much said everything that I wanted to say during the course of the thing and leading up to it, in the intro. Yeah, so I feel pretty good about this one. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Also, Sea Lightning, definitely hit me up. Send me a text, my man. If you might have already, but 864-315-7892. Definitely want to holler at you if you don't mind. And we're struggling here, you guys. If you want to help out the channel, we could sure use your support. PayPal, Cash App, Venmo are always an option. Links are down below. Big thanks and shout out to our channel Patreons. You can always support the channel monthly through Patreon for as little as $1 a month. As always, you guys, thanks so much for joining. God bless you. Have a great weekend. I'll see you in the next one. And spread the word, spread the world. Peace out, you guys. Y'all be good.